Great. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Montgomery County Council. Today is November 18th. We have a number of proclamations this morning. The first, we are going to kick off a proclamation celebrating Small Business Saturday. I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Malcolm.
Okay, when you get a bunch of chambers in the room, everybody's talking and networking, and it's hard to focus. So please, if you're here for the Small Business Saturday proclamation, please, everyone, come up. Okay, so, and there's make two rows.
A wide array of us.
Wide array. So welcome, everyone. We're here to recognize Small Business Saturday. Historically, Small Business Saturday is the Saturday after Thanksgiving, but given that we're all already bombarded with Black Friday sales every 2 minutes, it's important to get this message out early and to get the message out often, and to try to combat that message that we really do need to shop small. So we have with us today the men and women who support our small businesses every single day, our chambers of commerce. We have Gaithersburg, and everybody wave when I say Gaithersburg Germantown Chamber, Greater Bethesda Chamber, Greater Rockville Chamber, Greater Silver Spring Chamber, the Maryland Black Chamber, the Montgomery County Hispanic Chamber, the Poolesville Area Chamber. They're coming. Hey, Tom, you stuck it in. Yeah, nice to see you. And the Wheaton Kensington Chamber, and of course the Montgomery County Chamber. And as I always say, you can never ever have too many chambers. So they're all here today, and thank you all for everything that you do for small businesses. And we have several small businesses here joining us too, of course. Now, the reason that we're doing the proclamation is to highlight the importance of shopping small and shopping local every day. This weekend, I ran into one of the shops in my district, and I was greeted by, "Hello, Marilyn," when I walked in the door, and that's how she greeted most of her customers. And it was the Sweet Lemon in Poolesville, and it was just thriving. And people who walked in the door, they knew each other, and it was just really important to have this in the community. It's important for her as a small business owner, but it's very important for the community. We rely on our small businesses, whether they're restaurants, retailers, service providers. We rely on them to really provide the flavor of Montgomery County and the flavor of our communities. And when we think of our communities and we think about our local shops, we want them to be there. And the only way that they will be there is if we support them. And of course, we love to browse. We love to always talk about our small businesses, but we have to support them with actual money. We have to walk into their shops and we have to buy things. We have to go to those restaurants. We have to purchase those services. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. So before I read the proclamation, I want to have some of our small businesses talk to us. So one that many people know, Kefa Cafe, Lena Segave is going to say a few words. So thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me. So I wanted to say thank you for the chamber. There is especially our landlord, Chuck Levin, Fenton Village, Inc. So we strongly believe that we have to grow as a nation. We have to really grow as a community. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And we also have Corey Luckett. Corey? Yep. He's a little taller.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Corey Luckett. I'm the owner of the Branded Company. We are a full-service marketing firm. Branded is a small business, and we have worked with over 40 other small businesses in our community, some of which right here in Rockville. I want to thank Councilmember Balcom for the Small Business Saturday proclamation and for recognizing something we in this room already know. Small businesses are a big deal. We're actually a huge deal. Small businesses are the heartbeat of the local economy. We are the flavor and the spice of life of our community. Small businesses are more than just a place to shop. They're where passions have become professions. They are run by people who don't just live in the community, they invest in the community. We hire locally, we sponsor local youth sports organizations, we donate to school fundraisers, we join and participate in Chamber of Commerce. When you ask for somebody for help and they say, I got a guy, we are those guys and ladies. At Branded, we get to see something special. We get to see the moment when business owner realizes their idea, their product, their service is a story that matters. We get to see when their brand stands out in real life. We get to see that they impact other people and those people's families. We're lucky enough to be able to be the ones to help businesses communicate clearly, get noticed, and win. And when small businesses win, the entire community wins. That's why Small Business Saturday isn't just a shopping day. It's a reminder that we all play a crucial role in making our community strong, unique, and full of opportunity. So I encourage everybody here, not just on Small Business Saturday, but throughout the year, shop small, dine local, share a post of a local business, leave a glowing and authentic review. Support the passionate dreamers and builders that are sitting in this room today and all around our wonderfully diverse community. When we support small business, we're not just making a purchase, we're making an investment in the kind of community that we want to live in. Thank you all for your time. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for support, and it truly means more than you know.
So leave it to a marketer to say it so beautifully. So thank you, Corey. And so lastly, I would like to have Angela Franco, the CEO of the Montgomery County Chamber, who's just celebrating her first year on the job. So Angela.
Thank you. I'm going to put this here. Well, good morning. This is my happy place, when I'm working with small businesses. And I think here in the county, we have the great, amazing fortune of having so many chambers of commerce that are working every day for your success. And like the small business owners have been saying, the way you support is little things. If you're ordering food, you always have a company that you order from, right? Call your local chamber and ask for a referral. If you just go to a local restaurant. That's the way we're going to continue to keep creating economic development that is so, so important. And I want to thank you, Councilmember Balcom, for being such a champion for small businesses. We're all here because we're passionate and we know the importance more than ever here in the county. First, to work together, and second, to create economic development. And economic development is investing here in our communities, supporting small businesses grow, and making sure we hire here locally and we spend our money here locally. So thank you and have a wonderful week.
Thank you. So I'm going to read the proclamation. Whereas Small Business Saturday has been observed across the country since 2010 as a day to celebrate and support small businesses for their work bolstering our economy and communities. Whereas since the inception of Small Business Saturday, consumers have spent an estimated $210 billion at small businesses. And whereas there are over 604,000 small businesses in Montgomery County, accounting for 99.5% of all businesses in the state that employ over 1.2 million individuals. Whereas Montgomery County is proud to be home to thousands of small businesses, which add vibrancy and local pride to the county. And whereas we also recognize the strong support our small businesses receive by our local chambers of commerce, who work tirelessly not only to promote Small Business Saturday, but to encourage the community to shop small and shop local year-round. And whereas our small businesses reflect the diversity and history of Montgomery County and provide more than just economic development. Whereas this November and every month, we encourage residents to shop small, shop local, and to support the small businesses of Montgomery County. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County recognizes Saturday, November 29th, and every day as Small Business Saturday in recognition and in honor of the thousands of small businesses in Montgomery County, presented on this day by myself, Kate Stewart, and the entire County Council. So thank you. All right, so I'm gonna hand it out.
All right, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to all our chambers. Thank you to Councilmember Balcom. Our next proclamation is recognizing World Day of Remembrance for road traffic victims. It will be presented by Councilmember Friedson.
We are here this morning to honor and commemorate World Day of Remembrance for road traffic victims, those who we have lost on our roadways from infrastructure that we know is dangerous by design, too many people. And when we think about today, we have a collection of advocates, of government representatives from various departments and agencies. And most importantly, we have the families and loved ones of those we've lost. Too often we talk about the money that we're spending, the $439 million we are investing in safer and better infrastructure, which is important. We talk about the statistics, which are important, but far more than the statistics, when we're talking about road safety, it's really the stories and the people behind those statistics who we have lost. Far too many people whose lives are gone and whose memories are only kept through their loved ones and those they've touched. We're here to both honor those lives and their stories and the people behind those stories, and also to recommit ourselves to preventing the same tragedies from happening again, from ravaging other families like the ones who are here with us today. We've made progress, but we know that that progress is not nearly enough, as we have recently lost 2 more children on our roadways in recent months, and 2 more families, 2 more communities who are devastated and impacted and will continue to be impacted by the loss that they've experienced, a loss that is on all of us to recommit ourselves to improve. So before we begin the proclamation and hear from some of our special guests, I just wanted to have everybody introduce themselves.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shanika Whitehurst. I'm the president of Action Committee for Transit, and we advocate for the safety of all of our residents here in this county and hope for different transit alternatives and such to help keep pedestrians more safe on the streets.
Hi, I'm Dan Langenkamp. I'm the husband of the late Sarah Langenkamp, who was killed on River Road in 2022. She was a mother and a U.S. diplomat.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Fournell. I'm a committee member for the Pedestrian Bicycle Traffic Safety Action Committee.
Hi, my name is Rochelle Sobel. I'm the president of ASSERT, the Association for Safe International Road Travel. My son, Aaron, was 25 years old when he was killed in a bus crash in Turkey, along with 21 other people. He was volunteering as a physician abroad and actually just about to graduate and was killed at his last rotation. ASSERT works both in the U.S. and countries around the world to save precious lives on the roads.
Hello, my name is Marta Alvarado. I'm the daughter of Katie Alvarado, who was killed in a hit-and-run accident in 2006. My life hasn't been the same since then.
My name is Ed Lyons, and I'm a committee member. I joined the Pedestrian Bicycle and Traffic Safety Advisory Committee, that's a long one, to honor my former wife in the tragedy that impacted our lives 19 years ago. So it caused me to understand the importance of safety, and that is my mantra going forward with everything that I do. So glad to be a member of the committee and also to honor victims today.
Good morning. I'm Jason Sartori. I'm the county's planning director, and we work tirelessly every day with our partners on Vision Zero and trying to plan for our safer streets.
Good morning. I'm Chris Conklin, director of Montgomery County Department of Transportation, and working every day to make our roads safer than they are now.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Wade Holland with the Office of the County Executive, the Vision Zero Coordinator. As Councilmember Friedson mentioned, there's a lot of things that we're working on, and there's not quite enough that we want to see in terms of progress every year. But we do encourage you to check out our Vision Zero website and learn what the county, as well as our state partners and municipal partners, are doing each and every day to try and make our roads safer by design.
My name is Richard Hoy. I'm retired from the Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Services after a full career. I am been a traffic safety advocate, urban advocate, and member of the boards of numerous organizations promoting traffic safety. And I carry with me my godmother, Margaret Wydrow, who was killed walking across the street at 95 years young for her bowling date.
Hi, my name is Christy Daphnis. I'm a member of the Maryland Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, a member of the Montgomery County Council of PTA's Safe Routes to School Committee, and a committee member on Montgomery County Families for Safe Streets. I've been a traffic safety advocate for over 15 years now after a friend of mine, Seganet Harissa, was killed crossing Georgia Avenue in 2011.
Hi, my name is Mindy Baden. I'm a member of the Montgomery County Families for Safe Streets, and I'm chair of the Transportation Committee of the Greater Olney Civic Association. My son Brett died while crossing the street to meet some friends for dinner.
And I'm Joe Baden, Mindy's husband. Thanks.
I'm Ben Ross from the Action Committee for Transit, and I had a grandfather who was killed crossing the street at the age of 94.
My name is Chris Farrell. I'm also with the Action Committee for Transit.
I'm Mark Clements with Greater Washington, a nonprofit that advocates for transportation and land use justice in the region, and I'm also a two-time survivor of traffic violence.
Good morning. I'm Carrie Kasicki with the Coalition for Smarter Growth. We advocate for walkable, bikeable communities, which also means that everybody should be safe when they're walking and biking in our communities. Every loss is one too many.
Thank you for everybody for being here. We're going to hear now from Dan Langenkamp, who you heard
His wife Sarah was killed on River Road. They were evacuated from Ukraine for their safety to come to Montgomery County, Maryland, and she was killed biking back from back to school night. I was with Dan and several hundred others on a bike ride, and he is just an inspiration in the way that he has channeled the tragedy that his boys and he have faced into a way to make our roads safer for everybody. So now we'll hear from Dan.
Hello, everyone. They say when someone dies, may their memory be a blessing in the Jewish tradition. You're told this over and over again when you lose a loved one. I'm not Jewish, so at first this saying struck me. Why would I want to remember my loved one? Why would that be a blessing in this way? To remember the pain that we go through every day, to remember and feel the searing loneliness that you feel by being reminded of their absence. I began to realize that that remembrance helps you remember the light that they brought to the world. My wife, a lovely mother, incredibly talented linguist and U.S. diplomat, was a blessing to this world. And remembering her, it is a blessing. But it's more than that when someone says, may their memory be a blessing. Because in that saying, we are forced to also remember how important it is not to let their deaths be in vain. Their memory is a calling to us to do something about this terrible, terrible problem that we face. Sarah was killed in a year when more cyclists in America were killed than ever before. It was only exceeded by the number that was killed the next year in America. We have to do better than that. More than 40,000 Americans all over the country are killed. 40,000 is the equivalent of 100 people a day dying. That's the size of a mid-sized commercial airliner going down. And I think you would all agree that that would cause an incredible soul searching in America if that were happening. Nobody would fly. There would be congressional hearings, there would be major investigations, there would be months of media coverage. And this is happening every day in America. So today we are remembering. We're remembering Sarah. We're remembering all of our loved ones. Excuse me. We're remembering Summer Lim, 11 years old. And if you've seen her family's communications, you see what a talented little girl she was. I have an 11-year-old, and I've seen her artwork, I've seen her handwriting, I've seen her schoolwork. And it is extraordinary what we lost in Summer Lim. I didn't know James Anderson, who was 16 years old killed in Kensington, but he was also an amazing young man with a bright future. We remember all of our loved ones. Remember Ganga Prajapati, remember Lisa Martin, just killed this fall. This is happening over and over again. So when we remember, we have to think of them. And we also have to think of those of us that are still alive. My son spoke at our event this Sunday, several hundred people in front of the Lincoln Memorial. And he said, you know what? I would like to ride my bike to school, but I can't because I have to ride along a state highway. And my mom happened to have been killed less than a mile from that state highway. So how am I supposed to ride my bike to school? He said, when we think about this day, World Day of Remembrance, let's remember also that there are people of us that are living that would like to be able to use our roads for something other than driving. Please remember me. Please remember that this is not just about, this day is just not just remember, having nice thoughts about the dead. It's about remembering that this is about our future. This is about the community that we live in, It's about the community that we're trying to create for ourselves. One where we don't have to be locked in our cars killing each other. One where we can ride our bikes to school. One where we can walk to church on Sunday. One where our families can be safe. So this is World Day of Remembrance. Let's remember those who are dead, and let's do better. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And now we're going to hear from Mindy, who will talk about her son, Brett.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember. This is on. Thank you, Councilmember Friedson, and thank you to the members of the County Council for having this proclamation ceremony. There are many people who have selflessly dedicated time and energy to making our roads safer. Some have adopted this cause simply because they saw their need. But others of us began fighting for safer roads because we lost a loved one. For my husband Joe and me, we lost our beloved son Brett on January 16th of 2020. For me, and I imagine for all of us who have lost loved ones, my life is now divided in two, the before and the after. When I recall family functions or activities I've been involved with, they're always separated into before Brett died or after Brett died, and this is the normal that's now my life. The tears haven't ended, and I don't think they ever will. And there's so much sadness that surrounds my heart, but I do have hope. I hope that our legislators will continue to pass more meaningful traffic laws. I hope that the Transportation Department can engineer our streets and modify our infrastructure to be safer for everybody. I hope that drivers, pedestrians, and bike riders will realize that it's a shared responsibility to make sure that everybody gets to their destination safely. And I hope that despite our grief, our memories of our loved ones can bring us some comfort and peace in the weeks, months, and years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll now read the proclamation, and we will try to recommit ourselves to ensuring that Sarah and Brett and everybody else who we've lost on our roadways, their memories will be a blessing. Whereas the World Day of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims, commemorated annually on the third Sunday of November, honors the millions of people killed or seriously injured in road crashes and recognizes the profound and lasting impact these tragedies have on families, communities, and first responders. And whereas road traffic injuries remain one of the leading causes of death globally, claiming more than 1.19 million lives each year, and the burden is disproportionately borne by vulnerable road users, pedestrians and cyclists, highlighting the urgent need for safer, more equitable transportation systems. And whereas Montgomery County has made a steadfast commitment to Vision Zero, an ambitious initiative to eliminate all traffic-related fatalities and severe injuries through comprehensive efforts that include safer street design, reduced speed limits, improved pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure, and expanded education and enforcement initiatives. And whereas community organizations such as Families for Safe Streets and events like this Sunday's Ride for Your Life and the annual World Day of Remembrance memorials in Montgomery County play a vital role in raising awareness, supporting victims' families, and advocating for policies that prioritize human life and safety on our roadways. And whereas the Montgomery County Council reaffirms its commitment to achieving Vision Zero, where no preventable road safety deaths occur, and ensuring that every resident, whether walking, biking, driving, rolling, or riding public transit, can travel safely, and honors those lives that have been lost or forever changed by traffic crashes. Now therefore be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby recognizes World Day of Remembrance for road traffic victims, and be it further resolved that the County Council recommits to a future in which no life is lost or diminished on Montgomery County roads. Presented on this 18th day of November in the year 2025 by myself, Andrew Friedson, Council President Kate Stewart, and the entire Montgomery County Council.
Thank you, everyone, for being here to recognize World Day of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims. I just want to thank the families who came today to share their stories and for everyone's continued advocacy on these issues. Next, we will have a proclamation recognizing National Philanthropy Day by Councilmember Glass.
Good morning, everybody. If you are here for National Philanthropy Day, and if you are also here to support the special appropriation in which we are helping our community, please come on down. It is a day for giving in Montgomery County, and that's what this proclamation is all about. So I want to honor National Philanthropy Day because so much of what we do here in our community is to help other people, and we can only do it with and because of the kindness of so many of our neighbors, those who want to give back and give a helping hand to those who need it. We actually have 7,200 nonprofit organizations here in Montgomery County, each one of them playing a role in supporting so many aspects of life, from helping our children grow and be healthy and safe, helping our kids after school, helping with housing and food and health care. There is so much need in our community, and it is only able to be supported because of our philanthropists, those who have made something of their lives and have decided to help give back to those who need it. Not only do we want to thank the donors, but we want to help the staff who help inform so many of those philanthropists about the good work and the good organizations here in Montgomery County. Here behind, here at the council, there are a number of incredible organizations that help with our philanthropy. There are also organizations that benefit from that philanthropy. So I'd like everybody to introduce themselves, share their organization and why they're here.
My name is Anupam Ghosh. I'm a board member of College Tracks, also a longtime resident of Montgomery County. I'm here to support College Tracks and other philanthropy in the county.
Thanks. I'm Matt Boyer, the Chief Development Officer with College Tracks.
I'm Terry Blandon, the Director of Development Communications for Interfaith Works. We serve 35,000 Montgomery residents every year who are experiencing poverty and homelessness.
I'm Yao Vigians. I'm the Executive Director of Shepherd Staple, serving people in need for food security in Montgomery County.
I'm Matt Heyman. I'm the chair of the board of the Sandra Lee Heyman Foundation. We offer fellowships to high school students, primarily in Montgomery County, but also throughout Maryland, to promote STEM career awareness so they can make informed decisions and become wonderful contributors to our community.
Anna Hargrave, Executive Director for Montgomery County at the Greater Washington Community Foundation.
Robin Cameron, Chair of the Montgomery County Advisory Board for the Greater Washington Community Foundation.
Good morning. I'm Mary Mulcahy from the Morris and Gwendolyn K. Fritz Foundation, which funds throughout the DC metro area, but Montgomery County is absolutely a priority for the foundation.
Good morning, all. Olusegun Adebayo. I'm the Executive Director at Rainbow Place Shelter for Homeless Women. We've been serving Montgomery County for the past 43 years, offering hypothermia shelter.
Hi, I'm Sandra Jones, Chief of Staff at Mary Center.
And I'm Lida Vanegas, Vice President of Marketing Communications at Mary Center, which is a community health center that has been providing services for 37 years. And right now we serve 65,000 community members from all over the world. And we are in Montgomery County, Prince George's County, and Washington, D.C. Thank you, Council Member.
Hi, Mana McNeil. I am the Executive Director at Career Catchers, and we help county residents who are unemployed and underemployed get onto a career path with education and coaching. And my colleague is here.
Yes, hi, William Hegwood, lead coach at Career Catchers.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Philip Alexander Downey. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the CEO at the Montgomery County Pride Family, MoCo Pride Center, Inc., and we're the consortium of LGBTQIA plus advocacy, arts and culture, and service organizations that serve Montgomery County, Maryland, and the region.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Maddie, pronouns she, they, and I'm the Program Director of MoCo Pride Center in Bethesda.
Thank you, Maddie. It takes a village to serve our community, and this is the village. So thank you all for everything that you do. And to provide some additional comments from the foundation perspective, I'd like to invite Anna Hargrave to make some more comments.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Glass, and to the entire council for raising up the importance of philanthropy. It is my honor to serve as the Executive Director for Montgomery County at the Greater Washington Community Foundation. Through this work, I have seen groups of friends band together to pool their resources to make sure none of their neighbors would go hungry. I've seen families find healing as they helped others through the grief of losing loved ones. I met a donor who was so moved by the needs, he sparked a movement that raised millions to make sure people who didn't know how they were going to keep a roof over their heads would find relief and a path forward. And then there was the social worker dying of cancer who left her life savings to ensure that children across our community will get the resources they need to thrive. Time and time again, I have seen generous people step up for our community. One lesson I have taken away is that true transformational giving is not about the number of zeros on the check. Rather, it's about how the experience of truly giving generously transforms you, how it compels you to invest your time, your talent, and your treasure into a cause. That is how you make the deepest impact on all the causes closest to your heart. I joined the County Council in commending all the generous donors in Montgomery County, but we implore you to tell your friends the needs across Montgomery County are great, and we need others to discover how powerful it is to give locally and to see the impact of your giving firsthand.
I love it, Anna. True transformational giving. Yeah, the needs are only continuing to grow with federal cuts on the horizon, in addition to those that have already occurred. And so thank you for your call to action, especially as we enter the holiday season. And from the nonprofit side, I'd like to invite Matt Boyer up to make some additional comments on behalf of College Tracks and all the nonprofits.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Glass, and thank you to the whole council for your leadership in building a really powerful community to support people across Montgomery County who really need it. I'm Matt Boyer, the Chief Development Officer with College Tracks, and we believe in a more prosperous, fair, and equitable future for everyone across Montgomery County, and we think that higher education is a critical way to make that happen. I'll be really brief because I know you've got work to get on and attend to, but what I just want to say is I'm reminded today that philanthropy is not really financial, and it's not certainly not transactional. transactional. Philanthropy is about finding a shared vision, finding a belief that we can build a better, stronger, healthier, more fair and safer future for all the people around us in our community, and for taking the actions that are available to us as people to make that happen. That can mean giving, that can mean volunteering, that can mean advocating, that can mean sharing your lived experience, sharing your expertise, sharing your connections in all the different ways. So what I would just say to everyone is take the time that you can to give to this community to help make it stronger in any of the ways that are available to you. I'm reminded by the powerful proclamation earlier about road safety that philanthropy doesn't necessarily have to be joyful all the times too. It has to be passionate and serious and committed to a better, safer future. Thank you to everyone who standed with all of our organizations. Thank you to everyone who's given and volunteered and supported it. Thank you to our incredible public officials who wake up every day thinking about how to make our county more prosperous, more safe, and more fair for all of us. And thank you, Councilmember Glass, for giving us this space and time today.
Thank you very much, Matt. I think you hit on the commonality of all three proclamations today: a safer, stronger future for our residents, for our small businesses, and for our community at large. And so with that, I'm going to read the proclamation. You all can come in. A lot of space up here. The County Council of Montgomery County presents this proclamation. Whereas National Philanthropy Day recognizes the generosity and civic spirit of individuals, businesses, and organizations that generously support our community. And whereas philanthropy plays a vital role in advancing equity, uplifting vulnerable communities, expanding educational opportunities, supporting the arts, and addressing urgent needs across Montgomery County. And whereas countless volunteers and donors in Montgomery County embody the values of compassion, generosity, and community service throughout their contributions to nonprofits, faith-based organizations, and neighborhood initiatives. And whereas Montgomery County is home to 7,242 nonprofit organizations whose charitable work enhances public services and improves the quality of life for all residences. And whereas National Philanthropy Day reminds us that our acts of giving build stronger, more inclusive, and more resilient communities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the County Council of Montgomery County recognizes November 15th as National Philanthropy Day, and be it further resolved that the county honors all who give generously to create a better and more equitable community for all residents. Signed on this day by myself and Council President Kate Stewart. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming today. I think we'll see a number of you later this afternoon for the public hearing. So thank you for spending your day with us. We are now moving on to our general business. Madam Clerk, will you please share today's announcements?
Good morning. There's one change on today's agenda. Item 2R has been added to the consent calendar. This is the introduction and action on a resolution to approve an amendment to the FY26 operating budget, Resolution 20-820, Section G, FY26 designation of entities for non-competitive contract award status, Manna Food Center, Inc., Montgomery County Food Council, Inc., Capital Area Food Bank, Inc., and the the Maryland Department of Agriculture. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. The minutes from the October 7th, 14th, and 21st, 2025 council sessions have been circulated to the council for review. Are there any objections to approving these minutes? Seeing none, these minutes stand approved. Now the council will sit as the district council for agenda item 1A. This is a work session on the University Boulevard Corridor Plan. The Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee recommends approval with amendments. Before I turn it over to the chair of the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee, I want to remind folks that today is a work session. We are not going to be taking a straw vote on the overall plan today. What we are going to be doing for the next couple of hours is walking through the packet and the committee recommendations. We're going to take our time and hopefully get through the full plan this morning. As we have done in the past, staff will walk us through each committee recommendation, and there will be time for council members to raise questions and amendments or ask for additional information. If no objection is raised and no additional information needed, staff will proceed with the recommendation for purposes of drafting the final resolution. If there are committee recommendations that council members would like to spend more time considering or need additional information or time, or just more time, these items can be noted and revisited at a future council meeting before the straw vote on the full plan. But basically, our goal today is to get through the committee recommendations, get through the staff packet, so that staff has the opportunity to prepare the draft resolution for December 2nd. With that, I'll turn it over to the chair of the PHP.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to all of the work that has gone into this plan. The Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee held 4 exhaustive work sessions and concluded our work on the plan on November 10th. I really want to appreciate the Montgomery County Department of Transportation and State Highway Administration that participated in our work sessions. Montgomery County Department of Transportation in particular was involved in every single one of our work sessions and participated very actively. And thanks as well to the Planning Department and Council staff for their work, and to committee colleagues for your thoughtfulness and engagement. I want to thank also the other district council members, since this encompasses 2 district council members, one of whom is a committee member, but Councilmember Mink, in addition to Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez, for your active engagement, as well as those members of the public who have really been part of this process for the last several months at the council. Our focus has been on safety of the University Boulevard corridor for all users, but especially the families and the Blair and Northwood students who walk or bike to get where they need to go. The committee made several changes to the planning board recommended draft to reflect quite a bit of the feedback that we received from the community. We listened to the concerns, we responded, we forged compromise, and that's what's before us today. First, given the concerns about cut-through traffic, we rejected the recommendation, which was an updated recommendation for new street grids by funneling traffic from University Boulevard into and through the neighborhoods. We had concerns about trading one set of safety concerns with another set of safety concerns. Noted the fact that if we were building a new neighborhood now, best practice would be to create a street grid. But unfortunately, repurposing the existing conditions from cul-de-sacs and other dynamics from a suburban style neighborhood is challenging and could lead to significant unintended consequences, including many of the streets which don't have sidewalks or on-street parking, given the size and width. So it wouldn't be safe or desirable to direct more traffic through the communities. And so we made that recommendation and only allowed for pedestrian and bike facilities. The benefit of the street grid, we thought, was really focused on the pedestrian access points, and so we made it so that the pedestrian mobility would be prioritized, but not car connectivity, auto travel through the neighborhoods. Four Corners, which has complicated road patterns, we tried to balance the immediate need for increased pedestrian and bike safety, given the number of students traveling through that area on a daily basis. It's some of the highest concentration of students, given 2 large high schools in relatively close proximity, with various levels of disruption based on potential road widening, transit enhancements, and vehicular flow. We prioritize pedestrian safety, choosing the option embraced in the planning staff draft, which the public hearing draft, which we can hear about more from the staff going through this with Ms. Dunn. While the committee supports the BRT network introduced by the county executive many years ago and codified in the 2013 Master Plan of Transitways, We had to make choices in this challenging stretch through Four Corners. There was a request from the Montgomery County Department of Transportation under the county executive to study this question and revisit the bus rapid transit through Four Corners and the question of dedicated lanes, but ultimately we thought it was unlikely that this would happen and that the challenges to engineering wouldn't be justified. So we stuck to the 2013 master plan of transitways for this particular recommendation rather than the added language as requested by Montgomery County Department of Transportation. We rezoned several institutional properties to allow for mixed-use development should that building take place in the future. But we did recommend lower heights than what was originally recommended. There were a number of heights at the 100-foot level. We lowered those heights to what we thought was a more realistic and appropriate number at 60 and 65 feet for those properties, not only to be more compatible with the neighborhoods, but also just more realistic to what would be a reasonable redevelopment for those sites given the context of what is around them. Ms. Dunn will review those recommendations in greater detail when we get through them because we went site by site and intersection by intersection through this plan. The committee also recommends rezoning only the single-family homes abutting the corridor, leaving the non-abutting parcels further into the neighborhood unchanged. That was a consistent approach to what we did in the recently approved More Housing Now zoning text amendment as a way to balance consistency with what we have recently done with our need to offer more housing options for more people and to prioritize that in the master plan process. Our recommendation does, however, allow for rezoning to CRN, which will be limited to only residential on the abutting properties. The CRN zone, I think it's important to note and was discussed during the committee work sessions, allows for a better streetscape, more pedestrian improvements, and allows us to move forward with those key aspects of the recommendations without making quite the same level of changes as were originally recommended when this was sent over to the council. And then I just wanted to flag that Councilmember Fani Gonzalez and I are also recommending a proposal to require workforce housing on these particular properties for any project of 3 or more units or 15%, whichever is greater, similar to the More Housing Now Workforce Development ZTA. Workforce units, as colleagues know, are 80 to 120% of area median income and are income restricted, locked into a control period. That was included as an addendum to your packet, and we'll be going through that as well. And then finally, I'll end with the first action that we took as a committee. We removed the Kent Mill Shopping Center from the plan's boundaries, recognizing the concerns about preserving the culturally appropriate neighborhood retail and restaurants serving the community. And so we took that out. With that, I think that largely goes through at a high level. There's a lot of detail in this, but I will leave the detail to council staff and turn it back to you to turn to Ms. Dunn when you
Great.
can.
Thank you. I do want to recognize we have as chair of the planning board here, Chair Harris, would you like to say any opening remarks before I turn it over to staff?
No, I know you have a big day today, so we should move on.
Director Sartori, please feel free.
If I could, real quickly, thank you. For the record, Jason Sartori, Planning Director. I just want to say I think that it's highly appropriate that we're here today taking up this plan, given the proclamation that we had earlier. I think it's easy when we work on a plan to get caught up in numbers, whether it's height limits or target speeds or floor area ratios, but I think the most important number is 0. We want 0 fatalities on our roads, and any other number other than 0 is not a number. It's a person, it's a spouse, it's a son, it's a daughter, it's a parent. And so, as public servants, we need to do everything within our ability to work collaboratively across agencies, across communities, and here in the University Boulevard corridor to do what we can to prevent more fatalities. And that's kind of the biggest point of this plan. And so with that, I'll hand it over.
Thank you so much. Great. Ms. Dunn, I will turn it over to you to get us started.
Great. Thank you and good morning, Council. We are here today to do a work session on the University Boulevard Corridor Plan. As you know, the chair of the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee has given a great summary of all the actions taken by that committee. I will just note for you in your packet for this, there's a very lengthy staff report. Before the body, we always give you every recommendation that's in the plan because that is what will ultimately be what you are approving. If you make a modification to any of those recommendations, that's what we present to you in the resolution. So in the staff report, you've got every recommendation in the plan, edited or not by the PHP committee. Also in the packet, though, on Circle 61 through, I think it's 70, there is a 10-page summary of every change that was made by the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee, just to have it in a format that is more abbreviated and easier to follow. So at one point, I will reference this summary table, and you will get it passed out to you. But for right now, we'll start with the staff report. And one of the things I wanted to start with was the notion that this plan has had a lot of review. The plan had 2 public hearings. Typically, master plans receive 1 public hearing. This one had a public hearing held in the community at Blair High School. It had another public hearing held here at the council office building. You heard at the public hearings a question about whether this plan is a true master plan. That was also included in other comments from the executive. And in fact, I just want to clarify that in fact it is a master plan. It is a true master plan. It follows all the procedures of a master plan and the definition of a plan in our land use article. Basically, all master plans are amendments to the general plan, and a corridor plan is just simply a type of master plan. You'll notice in the staff report, I've listed many of the different types of names that we've given our master plans based on context of size and focus of the area. Those are on page 2. And just to note that the University Corridor is not the first corridor master plan we've had as well. We've had the Great Seneca Science Corridor, which was adopted in 2010, and we've had the Veers Mill Corridor master plan adopted in 2019. Also on page 2 of the staff report, you'll note that we have some high-level summary of the public testimony. We had over 80 speakers at these 2 public hearings. It was a lot of testimony to listen to and a lot of submitted written comments to go through. So these are very high level, but these are the recurring things that we heard. There was concern with upzoning of the single-family residential areas. There was concern whether that would lead to large-scale multifamily buildings and mixed-use developments. There was concern with replacing relatively affordable housing, whether infrastructure would keep pace with development. There was concern about the displacement of cultural anchors provided by the Kent Mill Shopping Center. Lane reductions, bus-only lanes, turn restrictions, and the new street connections were all things people mentioned in testimony. The pilot, bus-only, and bike lanes were made permanent without public engagement was another ongoing theme that came through the public testimony. And lastly, a concern by some residents that the planning board's recommendations didn't incorporate all of the community's input. But on the plus side, what we also heard from the testimony that we heard both at the public hearing and that was submitted were that there was support for modest density increases, duplexes and triplexes in particular, support for improved housing diversity and increase in supply to benefit middle-income workers, general density increases and mixed-use redevelopment of underutilized sites, infill compatibility requirements to safeguard transitions into neighborhoods, improved bike and pedestrian safety. There was support also for the bus-only lanes, bus rapid transit expansion, and bike infrastructure to help improve mobility and access in the area, and the many environmental improvements to increase tree canopy and improve stormwater. As I'll note for anyone who's kind of joining us for the first time on this plan, the plan is organized around certain elements within the area that are being proposed for recommendations. So you have a chapter on zoning, a chapter on transportation, one on housing, and we'll go through them chapter by chapter. But that'll take us to the very first issue where we have a change, which is the plan area. It is shown in figure 2 on page 14 of the plan. It includes both sides of University Boulevard, east and west, between the Capitol Beltway and Amherst Avenue. It includes segments of residential neighborhoods, public facilities, private schools, public parks, and institutional uses, including places of worship. During the first committee work session, Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez proposed a change to the boundary of the plan that would remove 3 properties: the Kent Mill Shopping Center, Kent Mill Urban Park, and the Yeshiva of Greater Washington site. There is a map of the new boundary line, which is depicted in blue. It's on page 3 of the staff report, and that was a unanimous committee recommendation to the council. I'll pause.
Not seeing anyone with any questions. I think we all very much agree with that one. Thank you very much.
Great. I will continue. In addition to showing you the plan boundary, I'll just note the plan has been broken into 4 districts. And within these districts, there are neighborhoods, and that is how all the land use, zoning, and urban design recommendations are presented in the plan. Those 4 districts relate to the planned BRT station area. So there's Amherst Avenue and Chestnut Ridge District. There's Arcola Avenue District, the Dennis Avenue District, and finally the Four Corners District. So we will go through them district by district, and we'll note where there are changes in land use, zoning, or urban design, which is the next section. But before diving into exactly the minute part of those recommendations, I just wanted to give a general overview of the CRN zone. I know that the chair of the PHP committee has kind of done that for you already this morning a little bit. I'll note just a couple other things. The intent of that zone in the zoning ordinance, every zone has an intent statement. The intent for CRN is to encourage development that integrates a combination of housing types, mobility options, commercial services, and public facilities and amenities, where parking is prohibited between the building and the street, to allow a flexible mix of uses, densities, building heights, appropriate to various settings to ensure compatible relationships with the adjoining neighborhoods, and to integrate an appropriate balance of employment and housing opportunities. The CRN is the least intensive of the CR family of zones. You can actually set the commercial FAR component to 0, which has been done for those properties abutting University Boulevard that were mentioned earlier. It is a standard method only zone, which means that someone who is in the CRN zone that wants to develop can apply for a building permit with the Department of Permitting Services, does not require optional method approval or public benefits. The development standards are well suited for infill development with lot coverage of up to 90%. And an open space requirement of 10% depending on housing type. It has setbacks between 4 and 6 feet for the front and side setbacks of 10 and 15 foot for the rear. There was considerable community concern over CRN replacing single family properties in the plan area, so the planning board has transmitted an overlay zone for the UBC plan area. So it's important to note that the overlay is designed to modify elements of the CRN zone to more specifically meet the needs of the plan area and address these concerns. First, it recognized that if you have a C of 0, there are certain commercial, institutional, civic uses that are allowed in our R60 and R90 zones currently. Those would then not be allowed if the C is 0. Only residential uses would be allowed. So the overlay modifies that to allow all the uses currently allowed in R60 in these areas. So it wants it to act more like R60. The overlay also states that for properties that are less than 15,000 square feet in size, the overlay restricts the development standards to that of a duplex building type. And I think that's important to note. If you have an average or a minimum lot size in R60 or R90, your development standards are going to be for a duplex. If you have multiple lots, if it's over 15,000 square feet, then the CRN zone standards apply. The other thing to note, because I think this is important when we've been talking about transportation and safety, is the overlay for larger properties also ensures that the on-site parking must be located behind the front building line. And again, that keeps people from exiting a building and then trying to access the public right-of-way and being hidden by cars or cars pulling out, pulling in, and blocking. So the UBC plan, as it's been modified in the CRN zone with the overlay, and ZTA 2502, the workforce housing ZTA, they've all been mentioned together as well. So just want to point out a few of those similarities and differences. Both the proposed CRN zone in this plan and ZTA 2502 are designed to address the need for more housing in the county, particularly for middle income residents who cannot qualify for existing programs to assist lower income earners. But they still struggle with housing affordability. Both focus on providing opportunities for small-scale residential infill redevelopment, and both direct the potential of this redevelopment to areas where we expect to grow in the county. However, 2502, which was recently passed, the More Housing Now, provides an optional method of development for units in these detached residential zones. It does not change the zoning, and because it didn't change zoning, requires applicants to go to the planning board for approval under the optional method. Under the CRN zone, development is all standard method, as I've mentioned, which is likely an easier and more affordable option for some homeowners. The development standards under CRN can be more flexible depending on lot size, and they are designed to improve the pedestrian environment. There's also a lower parking standard associated with CRN zone near transit. All of these factors likely to impact the potential for redevelopment. It is completely reasonable and expected that the UBC plan would recommend zoning that goes farther than potential redevelopment under ZTA 2502. The master plan process is designed specifically to address changes in zoning on individual properties. It is a multi-year process that engages stakeholders to discuss these recommendations and was frequently mentioned as a mechanism to implement such a change when we were reviewing ZTA 2502. And the committee had lengthy discussions about this. When we get to the first instance of this recommended type of zoning change, when we go through the staff report, we'll delve a little more into that. But right now I'm going to ask the clerk to hand out, this is the 10-page summary I was mentioning. It is in the packet online on Circle 61. And it'll be a much easier way for us to go through the changes that the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee made related to zoning and urban design. They did not make a change to every recommendation, but as I mentioned, those are in the staff report. Okay, what you will notice on the first page, we've already covered the first recommendation, which was the removal of the Kent Mill Shopping Center, Kent Mill Urban Park, and Yeshiva of Greater Washington from the plan boundary. That occurred in Chapter 1 in the introductory chapter. The land use, zoning, and urban design is Chapter 4 of the plan. And the first change made by the committee was with respect to a property called the Berkeley Court and Westchester Development. Currently, it is a Plan Development 9 zone. In the zoning rewrite in 2014, certain zones were not continued, and when a master plan is written, those zones are then converted to a new zone that is in our zoning ordinance, the PD zones being one of them. So it was required that this zone be given a comparable zone. The planning board recommended the CRN 1 with a height of 50 feet, and the committee just modified the height down to 45 feet.
All right, not seeing any questions, so we can continue.
Okay. The next one, which again, as I've earlier mentioned, did generate quite a bit of conversation, was, and this is repeated, so I'm not going to repeat this 10 times today, but it is on pages 32, 36, 39, 50, it's listed here on the chart, multiple pages. In every neighborhood where it would be relevant to have the zoning change, the recommendation is in the plan, obviously. And it is to rezone the detached residential properties. The planning board had blocks abutting University Boulevard. The committee has changed the blocks abutting University Boulevard to properties that abut University Boulevard, and to rezone them to CRN of 1 with a C, as I've noted earlier, of 0, residential FAR of 1, and a height of not 50 feet but 45 feet. And again, that's repeated throughout. That was a 2-to-1 committee recommendation. Councilmember Jawando dissenting, recommending that the plan reconfirm existing zoning for these properties.
Great. I have Council Vice President Jawando who'd like to speak.
Thank you. As Ms. Dunn mentioned, this is a recurring theme, but this is the first time that we're taking it up, so I want to I think this might be an appropriate place to talk about why I voted against this, and since it's underlying a lot of the following recommendations on the zoning. And it has two components for colleagues. One is grounded in the racial equity statement that was written on the change, and I bring it up now because the way the packet is created, we don't talk about racial equity to the very end, and it's really connected to this recommendation, so I think it's important to talk about now. And two, related to the change that was just made in the previous corridors ZTA. And so I just want colleagues to be 100% clear that this would override that for the University Boulevard corridor. So the amendment that was memo that was sent by Council Members Friedson and Fenner-Gonzalez would modify, which was not considered in committee, but I raised this in committee, and so I'm glad that it came up, but to add the workforce housing component, just to understand that this would override that zoning and the workforce housing component would not be in place, and other protections would not be in place that were negotiated and talked about in that very long ZTA process. So I think it's important, like lot consolidation and other things that were talked about. There would not be, this would override that, and they would not, and that was a very carefully considered thing. So I think there's a process question that I'm concerned about. If we went to residents and said, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and took all those months, and now this would just immediately override it with nothing happening. So I think that's a concern for me, and I think for the community. There's also a suggestion that this would be how we do this going forward, which I think is a concern when we don't have any data. But on the racial equity piece, my primary concern on the zoning is that it will have the potential to displace Black and Latino homeowners and renters. And with the President's permission, I would just like Ms. Pena to come down to talk about that racial equity statement.
Ms. Pena? And as she's coming down, Ms. Dunn, I know, I believe in committee, just to clarify what the racial equity statement, Ms. Pena
Sure.
can do this as well, because the racial equity statement was not on the overall plan, and I
Right.
just want to
Correct.
make sure
Correct.
everyone is clear, because I don't want to, I want to make sure we know what
Correct.
we're talking about.
Yeah,
So
I'll make that clear because the Councilmember Rwanda did mention that there is a racial equity section in the staff report, yes, which is a chapter in the plan, and it's racial equity related to the plan. But every ZTA is required to have a racial equity and social justice impact statement conducted because the overlay zone related to this plan comes forward as a zoning text amendment to add that overlay to the code. It had the racial equity impact statement evaluation done. So they are two separate things. I will also note page 6 of the staff report gets into this just a little bit because it was a discussion we did have in the last work session with the committee. And we did have Ms. Pena come and provide her comments and had planning staff also provide comments. Planning has written a lengthy memo also to provide more information related to their thoughts on the issues of displacement and their evaluation of certain data related to that. That is all referenced in page 6 on the staff report, and it's attached in your packet. You have both the racial equity evaluation attached in the packet, and you have planning's response attached in the packet as well. So with that, just laying out the bigger picture, it was a lengthy conversation. We've got OLO, we have planning here, we have a lot of information from both. I'll turn it back.
great. All right, Ms. Pena, do you want to talk about what piece of this you hold?
Sure. Jane Marie Pena, Office of Legislative Oversight. So I wrote the Racial Equity and Social Justice Impact Statement for Zoning Text Amendment 2512. So that zoning text amendment did include an overlay zone where the specific provisions in the overlay zone depended on the rezoning that was being proposed for the University Boulevard corridor plan area. So for the RESJ assessment, we did consider what the racial equity impact of that proposed rezoning could be. And so what we ultimately found was that the proposed rezoning, that the zoning text amendment could have a negative impact on racial equity and social justice because the proposed rezoning that the ZTA was dependent on could potentially disproportionately displace Black and Latinx homeowners for the development of market rate housing. And so that our analysis and our finding was driven by a few key factors. So first was based on the information that we had available, the status quo of the University Boulevard corridor is an area where owner and renter occupied housing is relatively affordable compared to the county. And we did also receive information from the planning department that indicated that tear down projects that replace more affordable older single family homes with more expensive ones were very uncommon in the plan area. So that was one key factor. Another key factor in that assessment was that the planning department's market analysis for the proposed rezoning did find that it was most likely to result in smaller scale market rate development, so duplexes, townhomes, that would not include moderately priced dwelling units that would be more affordable to households at lower incomes. And so our assessment there was that, you know, allowing the development of market rate properties in this area that is already relatively affordable could increase property values, and that increase in property values could increase property taxes and cause a financial burden on current homeowners that could potentially cause displacement. And so, you know, the final key factor is that to the extent that displacement could occur, what we found was that Black and Latinx homeowners in the plan area would be most vulnerable to that displacement because first, Black and Latinx community members do have really high rates of homeownership within the plan area, but also the Black and Latinx homeowners who live in the plan area, also based on data that we received from planning, we did see that they do have higher rates of housing cost burden, and they also have lower income levels. So they are more vulnerable to increases in property taxes that could cause displacement. So those were the key factors that led to our finding. But ultimately, we did have, you know, 2 recommendations to advance the racial equity impact of the ZTA. And those were to engage with Black and Latinx homeowners to amend the ZTA to better advance racial equity and social justice, and also to adopt policies that prevent the displacement of Black and Latinx homeowners in the plan area. So that was what we found, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Pena. I very much appreciate it. I know the Planning Board and the Planning Department has submitted a memo. I don't know, Chair Harris or Director Sartori, if you want to speak to this at this moment.
Sure, thank you. Again, for the record, Jason Sartori, Planning Director. I think that the memo does a pretty effective job of outlining, you know, some of our responses to this. I think some of the things I wanted to highlight. First, the proposed zoning changes don't really change the types of units that can be built in the CRN, what's proposed to be CRN. What it does is it makes it an easier process for a property owner to be able to pursue that. It makes it less costly, which means that those that own properties along there now, which do tend to be more people of color, have a more affordable opportunity under the proposed zoning to be able to take advantage of these new types of units. Same if it's a developer or a home builder who ends up purchasing a property and wants to rebuild it as a duplex. It will make it that less costly, and those homes can then be offered more affordably than could be today under the existing zoning, which includes 2502. So I think that the effect of this zoning change, and then the effect of the ZTA, which really addresses the development standards and the types of other uses that are allowed there, actually can have a very positive impact on the community and on the people who live there today and the people who could live there in the future. The other thing I would highlight is that displacement is not something that we've seen when we've studied this as big of an issue in Montgomery County. What we have seen is concentration of poverty. And with that, you get deteriorating housing quality, you get disinvestment. Where we have seen new development is where we've actually seen inclusive growth in populations of all different income levels. Where we haven't seen development is where we run the risk of that concentration of poverty. And so there's a positive outcome that we've seen across the county in having opportunities for more investment and development. And I think the key thing about this is this creates opportunities for more affordable housing, actually.
Turn it back to Council Vice President Joando.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know there was the response, and then there was a response to the response that I got. I don't think colleagues got from OLO on some of the claims, but maybe I'll just ask questions to illuminate so you can respond. One thing that, another reason this was concerning to me was not only the disproportionality of homeowners that are Black and Latinx in this corridor and affordable homes, but also potential renters that would be displaced. In the session we had in PHP, We talked about the most likely things to be redeveloped here, which is a real big part of the analysis in the OLO, are townhomes or a duplex, and there's no requirement that any of those be affordable. They will most certainly be more expensive than what's currently there. I mean, that's just, I don't think anyone's denying that. And so the idea that it's creating more affordable housing, it doesn't jive, because you're going to tear down something that's older and more affordable and build something that's newer, even if the process is quicker and allowable. I get that. To do the thing, it's still going to be sold for more. And so could you speak to that? I mean, or if you disagree with that, tell me why.
No, I think that's an excellent point. I think I want to touch upon the renters issue.
Could you just tell us your name?
Sorry,
we know who you are,
sorry
but it's okay. Just for the record.
I promise, not my first rodeo, but I make this mistake. So for the record, Zubin Atrianwala, planner with Montgomery Planning, and these are also absolutely valid concerns, which is what do we do about renters? The renter population that we largely reached out to and spoke with were living in multifamily housing. And their biggest concern was housing availability and housing access. So if they wanted to continue staying in the area, there is nothing for their price points. So for an aspirational renter who wants to get to a homeowner, and I'm glad we keep calling it relative affordability, the relative is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this neighborhood because it's affordable to maybe half the population at this point. In a neighborhood that is 64% already owner occupied, if I'm doing my numbers right, anybody who could afford a house, they could buy it, they have already bought it. Everybody else is priced out of this market at this point. So, and to Mr. Sartori's point, the idea that when a single family home comes on a market, the buyer and the seller both want, a certain price point. But if that seller is being forced out of that market and they have to move, if they have an opportunity instead to build another unit on their property, then they now have an opportunity to actually stay in place, tap into their equity. And this will be very important for especially people who are empty nesters, who are seniors, for them to be able to age in place and stay in place. I think this optionality, frankly, will be very valuable just from that perspective. Also, I'm a little concerned that we would say that, oh, this is largely Black and BIPOC ownership, but let's not increase property values here. I think that's a problematic place to begin with from a racial equity perspective, which is to say, let's keep home prices suppressed in neighborhoods that already have high BIPOC rates. Instead, if we can do a both-and approach where we can increase housing supply and increase opportunities for potential home price increases, that would be important too.
Yeah.
Also, with the idea of property taxes, I think Director Sartori has pointed it out in a previous occasion, which is that a duplex has a comp as a duplex. So a single family home is not going to be having a sort of price comparison to a duplex potential. So a lot of us are homeowners in the county. We pay homeownership taxes based on the size of our unit, the quality of our unit, and so on. So my neighbors' property taxes are substantially different from mine because we have an addition, they don't. So I think we already are aware of that. So I think the idea that this will dent Black and brown home ownership and lead them to be displaced, I think that's a bit of a stretch at this point. So I'm a little concerned that we are now saying that if an area has higher Black and brown ownership rates, then let's keep their property values suppressed by whatever means possible. Quality of home ownership, quality of homes, as well as quality of renters or quality of the rental units available in that area leaves a lot to be desired, frankly, because when we did the door-to-door canvassing as our outreach, where we spoke to a majority of renters, the concerns we heard were affordability, infestations, lack of code enforcement. These are the concerns that renters currently have. So I think even within the renters, there's a huge disparity of somebody who's priced out of the single family market and who's sort of relegated to a multifamily house. So I think we are trying to solve these issues at the same time, but I agree with you that there are these concerns and we can address them sort of
Yeah, and if I
point by
could
point.
jump in, I appreciate that. You kind of said both things, though. You said the goal is not to suppress people's property values, by the way. But you said my property value is lower because I don't have X. So you're saying so you kind of talked about both sides of it, but just there is something called market signaling in the sense that if values go up, they go out from everybody, even if your house isn't the one that has the pool or the addition or the duplex or whatever. And that will happen. So I think you could still have that inflationary effect. And I agree with you. We need more supply, particularly on the moderate and affordable side. That's why I tried to put forward anti-displacement measures, which we have not included here. And that was one of the recommendations from OLO, such as if you build a duplex or something, one of them has to be affordable. We talked about this in committee at a certain level, so that the person that is leaving could potentially have the opportunity to come back. Things like no net loss for the Warwick and the big apartment buildings, right? That at least the people who are there now, if you redevelop the Warwick, that they would be able to come back. But we didn't include that. We said strive for. We didn't include a requirement. So I get what you're saying. I think we're saying we hope these things happen. And the reason we went through the long list of you're going to track the anti-displacement to see what happens, there's no real teeth in anything to make sure it doesn't happen. And that's my concern. I'm not against, I grew up in a duplex. It was our first home. It was great. But we have to make sure that there's affordability or protection. So Ms. Pena, do you have anything to say in response? Okay. Ms. Gavoni, and then I'll yield.
Sure. Lisa Gavoni, Planning Supervisor, Montgomery Planning. So I did want to talk a little bit about the status quo, and we talked about this last time, is that, yes, there is very limited teardown pressure right now, but this is a 20-year plan. We've seen the teardown market move from West County, what was once a phenomenon there, move to places like outside downtown Silver Spring. And I want to talk a little bit about price points. The average new detached home in Montgomery County goes for over $2 million. That's new construction. A new townhouse goes for $900,000. Is that expensive? Yes, but it's less than half the price of a new detached unit, which makes it more open and accessible to more households in Montgomery County. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do here, is to create more housing diversity, more options, more accessibility to Montgomery County households. And it's really important that in an area, even if there's no teardown pressure there, we don't know what the future holds. And that providing that option of housing diversity is really important to safeguard access to the homeownership market in the county.
Even if it's more expensive than what's there now.
Well, I think the question is the comparison. The comparison to a new detached home or a townhouse. Would you rather have a $2 million detached home or a $900,000?
Oh, no, I agree with you that this would be better than a teardown. But there's been 5 teardowns in this corridor in 10 years or something. But I get that. I know you're saying it could always happen.
Right.
It could always happen. But I think the more likely thing to happen, like you all said, that there would be 2 townhomes or a duplex built that would cost a lot more than the house that's there. And then I'm concerned about the people that are there now, what's going to happen to them. And we have nothing in place to ensure that they're going to be able to come back. That's my concern. And for that reason, I'd like to move that we reconfirm the current zoning that's in place. And this will be a similar motion, but I guess this is the first opportunity to make it.
Okay. Did you want to speak? Sorry.
Can I just say one thing before? Yeah. So in terms of, you talked about renters. So what Ms. Dunn will also talk about, that there were CRT zones that were recommended, and I think the committee voted 3-0 for many of those CRT zones. And those CRT zones are where they'll have larger apartment communities that will have MPDU requirements. So in terms of we're creating more opportunities for renters in this whole corridor. So I'm just saying opportunities will bring more MPDU. So there are opportunities for renters in this community. At MPDU level.
Okay. All right, we have a motion, and the motion is to recommend the plan confirm to existing zoning for all the properties we're going to talk about, correct?
Correct.
All right, so I have a motion. Do I have a second? Councilmember Mink seconded. I have a number of people in the queue, but we have a amendment on the table. So if you want to speak with it, please stay in the queue. Councilmember Mink.
Thank you, Madam President. So as I noted in committee, I do support Council Vice President Joanda's position on reconfirming the existing R90 and R60 zoning for the single-family detached residential properties. On the conversation that we've just been having, I would be remiss if I didn't note that in regards to the racial equity and displacement concerns, that I had brought this up before we had this statement because of my firsthand experience knocking doors in my district and who I was meeting when I knocked doors on the corridor versus inside the single family home neighborhoods. And so seeing that statement did reconfirm my, not data-based, but certainly what I was seeing firsthand experience there. Additionally, we have heard from many, many residents who would greatly appreciate seeing how ZTA 2502 plays out before changing the standards. I think very understandable. And the additional housing yield, as we see in the packet here from the rezoning, is relatively marginal. We're looking at maybe an additional about 300 units, which will be, generally speaking, more expensive than the existing properties, potentially with the exception of a small percentage of those if there's the addition of workforce housing requirements. Meanwhile, right now, looking at my district alone, we have, for example, the Hillendale Gateway development coming online, bringing almost 500 units, with more than half being permanently affordable. Viva White Oak will be bringing nearly 5,000 units. So again, given the concerns discussed today and those we've heard from residents, I do ask colleagues to support this motion.
Thank you. Councilmember Sales.
Thank you. I just had a few questions about the overlay zone, and you've explained why MPDUs were excluded. Is there a provision for first right of refusal?
The county has the first right of refusal already.
Okay. So is the reason why there's not an MPDU, why MPDUs are excluded, is because it's unaffordable from I thought they were excluded from the properties abutting the corridor.
So the MPD requirement,
for the home ownership properties.
So MPD requirement kicks in at 20 or more units. There is a payment to the Housing Initiative Fund for projects that provide 11 to 19 units. So there is an MPD requirement if it hits that threshold, but there is not a MPD requirement if it's under that threshold.
Okay. And then, do we know how many properties in the overlay zone are rentals versus ownership, or are they all owners and rented to multiple families?
We do. We're getting that.
Oh, no. Thank you.
So in the committee recommendation, the number of single-family detached parcels that were rezoned to CRN was 179. Of those 179 parcels, 33 are not occupied by the principal owner. That is an SSTAT designation that says that they're not occupied by the principal owner. It could be, it most likely means that they're a renter, but it could mean second home. I just wanted to make that clear.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Which is 18% of the parcels rezoned. Okay. And that's on Circle 46.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's all I had for you.
Great. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam President. I will not be supporting this amendment. I going to just highlight a couple of things just because we covered this already at PHP. We covered this already during the Housing Now ZTA. And during the Housing Now ZTA, I'm just gonna say looking back at the Racial Equity and Social Justice report from OLO, the two recommended amendments that they put. Number one, engage with Black and Latino homeowners in the UBC plan area to amend ZTA 2512. Okay, we're talking about this sector plan right now, but hey, let's read this. Just the fact, or just making the assumption that we haven't talked to Black and Latinos already for years, it's offensive. I door knocked in my neighborhood. I had events that I personally held in Spanish. I went to events hosted by the planning department where Latinos and African Americans, Black and Latinos were at. Just the fact that we're making that assumption is just so wrong. 2, because it doesn't stop there. Adopt policies to prevent displacement of Black and Latino homeowners in plan area. Okay, I think we have covered that in the sector plan already. And besides that, there is looking at the progress that we had at PHP. And Councilmember Fritzen mentioned this already. He and I went back, and after we finished with PHP, and made a recommendation that we're going to cover today about requiring workforce housing if you have more than 3 units in any property to align with the CTA corridor plan that we had already worked on and passed. Guys, this is a sector plan. You're supposed to increase densities. This is what we do in sector plans. Why? This is the venue to analyze areas in terms of transportation, water and sewer, school capacity. Keeping the status quo makes no sense, and it's irresponsible. We are creating opportunities in this sector plan, and I am proud of the work that we did. And I'm gonna say no again to this amendment because it makes absolutely no sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kath.
Thank you very much, Madam President. You keep using the term affordable, and I keep asking what's affordable. What is the price that's affordable that we're considering trying to get to? Do you have a number for that?
No, I think that's the point. I know that you've had this question. It is the relativeness. So it's a question of, what can be built today. That duplex can be built today under ZTA 2502. If a property is ripe for redevelopment, for replacement, it could be torn down today and they could build the duplex. They have to go through a costly and time-consuming site plan process. That's going to add to the cost of that new duplex. It might be so costly that it becomes prohibitive, and that what ends up happening is it's a lot easier to just go to DPS and get a permit to build another single-family home. That new single-family home, again, on that property that's ripe for redevelopment, will be much, much more expensive than either duplex would have been, and much more expensive than the existing single-family home. What that amount is depends on, the amenities offered in that house, the size of the house, a number of different things. Same thing goes for the pricing of the duplexes. Under what's proposed, the option of doing that duplex on that property that's ripe for redevelopment will be easier and less costly, meaning that the prices of those, it might make it more likely that those happen as opposed to a new single-family home. So it's all relative. The duplexes would definitely be less expensive than a new single-family home, and a new duplex under the proposed zoning would be less expensive than under the existing zoning.
It would be less expensive if the zoning stayed the same and the permitting was the same. But I still want numbers. We keep talking about, and I think we're afraid to mention numbers. We say that $996,000 is less than $2 million. When people talk about affordable housing, they're not talking about $1 million house. And so I believe we need to figure out the number for what we are trying to get. If we're saying an affordable house, not attainable, but an affordable house in Montgomery County is less than $500,000 or $400,000, and it's that range from whatever it is, from 80 to 120% of AMI, then that would be about a home that, the way I figure it, is about $450,000 to $660,000. Well, to most people, $660,000 is not what they're considering affordable. And I don't know how we can get to that affordable number if we keep playing the idea that $1 million is less than $2 million. That's not what I'm after. I believe we need more housing. I don't know that it should be here, but I believe we need more housing. I believe we need a housing that's a regular number, a good number for people to be able to afford and rent. And I don't see how we're doing it this way. And to the point of the amendment, and let me just say, that the PHP committee deserves a great round of applause, as does the planning department and our staff, for trying to make this better. This is better. This just isn't good enough, in my opinion. And if for the idea for the amendment, if you say that something is going to be an affordable house, let's talk about what affordable is. But if you finally get to that number, how much more do the other two houses have to be selling for in order to make up for that affordable house? Somebody who's going to be doing this for a profit is not going to do this for the smile and for anything else. Please.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. And again, with the numbers, it's difficult. But one of the things we did for this plan is we did an economic analysis of these houses. What our findings were, the price point that this is at, which is somewhere between that 500 to 600,000 for a single family home, and some cases higher. There are $1 million homes on this corridor, absolutely. So the price point that this corridor is currently at, what our economic analysts told us is that the duplex construction pencils in from a financial perspective only if the primary homeowner actually takes the lead on it. Because for a developer or a flipper, so to speak, to come in to buy that house, then go through the permitting process to keep that house kind of on the market for while all this is happening, those numbers don't pencil in simply because the housing prices currently are so expensive. So what we think is the most likely outcome if this change goes through is that some enterprising single-family homeowner is going to take the lead, and they will add a unit to their own existing house. And then if they want to tap into the equity of the house, either they just add a unit and then they start living there and say, this is a duplex, now I live in a bigger house, or they take that second half and sell it at a price point that is 100% going to be lower than the existing home. Of course, if a luxury developer comes in, buys a house, has the disposable sort of capital to sit on the market for 9 months while they do an extensive renovation, that house is going to be that $900,000 price point. But what is happening currently is when that market is that lucrative, they come in and they do a single family home, and then that's that $2 million. I don't think this market is ready for $2 million homes, but it's certainly already there with a $1 million home. So I think what we are trying to do is at least have that option available where a existing homeowner with the capital that they potentially can tap into, considering, I think, I don't have my numbers in front of me, but I think our county is about 20% outright homeownership, where people don't have a mortgage on their homes. There are seniors who are in that fortunate position. So they may be house poor at this point, but they may be sort of equity, house rich, but equity poor. And maybe they could tap into that equity, add a housing unit themselves. So I think that's the opportunity that we think we can explore. But of course, no guarantees that the market becomes so lucrative. But if it becomes that lucrative where suddenly these homes are very attractive, then so is the single family market. And then the concerns of the displacement still stand. So I think the status quo doesn't solve any concerns of the displacement. And I think that's a point that we are missing at this point, which is status quo. If the sort of demon of displacement enters this market, it's going to enter regardless. The zoning amendment is not going to be the invitation for that demon. So.
Well, I don't agree with your numbers. If somebody, if they have, they don't have a mortgage on their property, so they own this $600,000 single-family home with no mortgage, and at that point they decide that they want to build next to them so that they can. So in that home, even though the cost of the land is not included, I guess, but they would get that profit back. If that home has to sell for more than $600,000, it has to. There's no way with materials the way they are today. I understand that the status quo is not good. I understand that. But I also understand that what we're doing is not improving beyond the status quo. So therefore, I will support I don't think this is the best amendment that's ever come before this county council, but I will support the amendment. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Sales, did you get back in the queue? Sorry. You took your name off the list before I saw it again. I thought you were there. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, colleagues. I agree with Councilmember Katz that the status quo is unacceptable because we do not have enough housing that's affordable. I agree, Councilmember Katz. And I want to go into the numbers. I appreciate you talking about the numbers, but I want to talk about the numbers that are in this packet and that are in the Res J statement and just get some clarity because I think there are conflicting conversations about data. And so I just want to have a baseline discussion. In the Res J statement, it says that the rental rate for the planned area is 27%, and that's what we've been talking about, right? Is that correct, Ms. Pena?
Yes, I think that was based off of what I gathered from the actual UBC plan.
Yep. Right. Just setting baseline, right? So 27%, and that has been discussed here. It's been discussed from the dais about a 27% rental rate, which is lower than the county's overall rate, but 27% is still significant. When we look at what the committee has determined, going from, and this is on Circle 46, going from what the number of single-family parcels that are included in the overall plan, which is 1,687, but recommending zoning changes for only 179, that brings the non-occupied ownership rate, also known as the rental rate, down to 18%. Am I reading that right, Ms. Gavoni?
Sure. So that just has to do with the single-family detached parcels that are being rezoned to CRN that are up for discussion. So 179 of them are being rezoned, and 33 of them are not occupied by the
And
school.
that's the discussion we're having now. Is that right?
Correct.
Right. Just setting baseline that the 27% is not what we're talking about. We're talking about 18%. And so I just, again, important discussions, but just setting our understanding as to what we're really discussing here. And of those 18%, again, given the Res J statement, there's a lot of home ownership among everybody. And I should have said this from the offset, but while we have two district council members who live on the ends of the corridor, I live in that corridor too, and I just drove down University Boulevard last night to go to a meeting, stopped at the Safeway. I go to Woodmore Bakery all the time. My husband works at Brookside Garden, so he goes through the community every single day. I know it. I know what the community is, who they are, and I know that there are challenges, not only in the community, but across Montgomery County because the status quo is not working. And when we talk about housing affordability, what I do know, undeniably, is that any one of those homes can be torn down and turned into a McMansion by right. A few have popped up. If you go down University, there's actually one or two that are much larger than their neighbors. But what we're talking about now is giving a homeowner the opportunity to turn a home into a duplex or a triplex instead of the multi-million-dollar McMansion they can do by right. This is about providing different types of options. And because it has such a high ownership rate, the choice is in their hands. I mean, it's a 82% home ownership rate. That is extraordinary. And I'd prefer less McMansions and more homes that people can afford. That's what the committee has ultimately decided, even if it is significantly changed from the planning board's process. And again, I appreciate the work of the committee, the robust discussion, the continued discussion now. But if we agree that the status quo is not working, you got to change the status quo.
Thank you, Councilmember Glass. Councilmember Sales.
That was helpful. Thank you for clarifying. I did have a question regarding the RESJ statement. I know that Councilmember Fani Gonzalez mentioned the outreach, and I know that planning also detailed the outreach that was done. Was the recommendation done before that information was collected regarding the outreach, or do you think additional outreach was needed?
So we based our recommendation based on the information we had available on Montgomery Planning's outreach for the UBC plan. So we looked at the appendix that was on community engagement, and it didn't indicate what the demographics of the community engagement participants were. So that was one challenge. We weren't certain to what extent, Black, Latinx, Asian, other BIPOC residents were represented in engagement.
Okay.
And we also didn't have a, disaggregated sense in terms of what the feedback was on the engagement from renters versus homeowners. So in our recommended amendment, we do specifically recommend engagement with Black and Latinx homeowners because we assess that they're the ones who are most vulnerable to displacement from the proposed rezoning. And so from the information provided in the appendix, we didn't have a sense of, what feedback specifically Black and Latinx homeowners were providing to the UBC plan and how that in turn was incorporated into the plan.
Did you have anything to add, Mr. Sartori, or anyone from planning? Because I see here, canvassing knocked on 1,000 doors, resulted in 239 conversations. 41% were African American, 20% were Hispanic and Latino. So I'm not sure if.
Yeah, again, Zubin Adrinala for the record. Thanks for the question. So I think the disaggregated data that you see here, that is because we collected that data. But in the process of outreach, we typically don't have the wherewithal to ask everyone who comes into a meeting to say, give us your preferred gender or preferred race. So we don't have that data. And I think one of the reasons that we didn't include it in the appendix disaggregated was that reason, because we cannot sort of forcefully say that, we engage with X percentage for X ethnicity. So I think because we don't have that data for every single outreach point we didn't include it. But of course, because we did the door knocking, and at the door knocking, we had the questionnaire where we spoke with people and said, give us your self-identifying race. That's why for that particular effort, we have that data. Of course, that effort was in multifamily housing, so it's fair to assume that most of these 239 odd voices are already renters. But they're all in apartment dwellers, so we didn't knock on single-family homeowners' doors.
Okay, because that was going to be my next question. Of the contacted populations, we don't know which ones were homeowners versus renters.
Sorry, that question was never asked whether you are a homeowner or a renter, even in meetings, so we don't have that disaggregated data of homeownership versus renters.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Malcolm.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify the when we looked at the prior discussion about housing and we changed the ZTA that we went through, the issue of the protections of the bundling lots and the flag lots, where do those protections fit in this master plan, or do they?
Ms. Dunn, do you want to take that? Or?
Sure, and I'm happy to try to answer that question. When the planning board first brought the recommendation, they did blocks of rezoning. And as the committee went through and deliberated how much of that area should be rezoned and literally went neighborhood by neighborhood and ended up doing the abutting, they didn't go even farther to say, should we put even more restrictions that might result in a fewer number of these properties coming forward for this type of redevelopment. And I think part of that might have been, and I'm just inferring this, they can chime in, but take one, for example, the corner lots. If we have a corner lot that doesn't front on University, in 2502 that would not be eligible, but in the plan area and the ZTA and overlay that you're looking at, it would be eligible. And I think in this area, one of the things that was noted was the difficulty of people entering and exiting University Boulevard with a driveway. And so in this case, those corner lots would actually be a benefit they could take advantage of this program. And as Councilmember Glass mentioned, this is something that somebody could get a building permit for, just like a redo of a house into a larger house. They could go get a building permit now for a duplex or triplex. And if it doesn't front on University, that in this case might actually be a benefit to the safety and to the pedestrian environment, but could still take advantage of this project.
Okay, thank you. Council Vice President Jawando.
Just to be clear, Ms. Dunn, I appreciate that explanation, but just to be clear on Councilmember Balcom's question, the SRA requirements are not a part of this.
They are not a part of it. They are not applicable to it because they are applicable to the optional method of development for workforce housing, and this is by right.
Right. Okay. So I just want to make sure that's clear. Like the arduous process that we went through on that, with a lot of community input, in a month or two has the potential on this corridor to just be totally overridden. And I think people need to understand that it's hard for the public to have trust in our process when we're saying, well, we go through all that and we do the SRA and we go through everything, and now we're saying, never mind, on this corridor. Do you understand?
Sure. And what I would just point out is through all the conversations we had about attainable housing and work for or more housing now and all that, we kept hearing a lot about how this needs to be handled through master plans. And here you have a master plan that includes a really extensive process. So I don't want to belittle the process that the team and the community has gone through over the course of 3+ years. That was a process that involved a lot of conversations with community members and resulted in the recommendations, and that process also includes the PHP committee process and gets us to where we are today. So there has been a lot of process and a lot of interaction and conversations around this. I just want to make sure
that
that's
sure.
clear.
But the fact remains that we just said we were going to do one thing on a corridor, and then we just completely changed it 2 months later, and all the protections are gone. And in the workforce housing proposal that's being brought back, while I appreciate it, it wasn't going to be brought back. It's because I had this intensive conversation at the last committee hearing. And the racial equity stuff wasn't even going to be discussed in the way it was discussed. And it wasn't even mentioned in your packets. In response, that OLO report's been around for a while. And until I went into that session, it wasn't addressed. And so I think that's the problem I'm talking about.
If I may, I didn't want to interrupt you, sorry, but if I may just make one small point, Carrie Sanders for the record. I do think it's really helpful when you're thinking about this corridor to think about it in the context of the land use and the transportation.
Of course, yeah. We're
And
going to
I
get to that
think
where there's a lot of agreement.
So I think one of the concerns I think we have with retaining the existing zoning is it doesn't address some of the transportation concerns and safety concerns that we have about the corridor. And I think we've had a very emotional morning with seeing the victims of traffic crashes this morning. And I think we are really striving with this type of zone to make the corridor safer. And so I think that's one of the reasons we have picked this type of zone versus the existing zone. So I'll be quiet because I know you've indulged us with a lot of time. So, but I just wanted to make that point.
And I appreciate that. And one of the things, you actually are leading me perfectly, Ms. Sanders, which I really appreciate, to my next point. If my colleagues would, turn to page 7 in the packet, the potential housing yield here, the stuff that we agreed upon in the committee, it's at the top of page 7. The existing zoning has 2,691 units possible. The planning board draft has had 4,584. The committee recommendation had 4,060, and my recommendation had 3,780. So there's no status quo here no matter what. We're going way up in the amount of housing that's allowed because there was agreement on the multi-family properties being changed to this zoning, which is where you have the concern around safety a lot with those dense, very dense properties, and the kind of the vacant lots, the business lots, the commercial lots, excuse me. And so there's still a lot being done here. The last point I want to make, the most likely outcome here are duplexes or townhomes. The concern, those are not, there is no requirement for any affordability with those. And to Councilmember Katz's point, there's not going to be a scenario where you're going to have or it'll be the exception, not the rule, where you're going to have one of those units being affordable unless you require it. Again, I tried to do that in the ZTA. That's called an anti-displacement measure, or unless you require no net loss in the Warwick. But if you don't do it, there's no incentive to do that. You may have one person that wants to do an ADU-like thing and have a family member with them, and maybe they do that, and that's great for them. But why don't we incentivize that and require it? And that's the challenge here, and I think that's why you got the OLO report you did, because you're concerned of this pressure on these homeowners in relatively moderately priced units. So, and that, along with the ZTA requirements around flag lots and all the stuff we did just kind of being tossed, I just don't think this is responsible. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much. I do want to just say one thing, because I want to level set and thank Ms. Pena and OLO for their report and also planning, because I can tell you I had a conversation with Director Sartori and Chair Harris the minute the OLO report did come out. They started thinking about, okay, what is the communication we need to understand this? So that everyone is coming here doing their best job. And I do want to point out, both in what planning has put out and what Ms. Pena has put out, is the difficulty in predicting and using the data. And it says in our OLO reports that this is to help inform us, just like the work of the planning department. So I just wanted to just ground us in that, because you all are incredible at your jobs, and this is really hard work. And I just want to say I appreciate each and every one of you and what you bring to this conversation. And it is our unenviable position to take this all in and then make what we think is the best decision for moving our community forward. And I think we just all need to understand that we're all coming here with the same goal and the intentions of doing that as we go through the rest of the morning. Okay? All right. Councilmember Almaraz.
Thank you, Madam President. So, start with, I think this is my fourth or fifth master plan as a member of this body. And, I've been involved in a lot of master plans on the other side of the aisle because, recreation is a component of every master plan as it's developed. And every single one of them has had their fair share of controversies, of pulls and takes, and challenges. But all of them have had the same reasonable and thoughtful goal, which is to try and plan ahead decades in advance in ways that are responsible and reasonable. And we're basing a lot of our conversations today on the current market, which is sadly, in the short term, about to change pretty significantly, because all arrows are pointing in the direction of a housing crisis, not just in our community, but across this country, that will depress the value of home values for the foreseeable future because of the possibility and the likelihood of a looming recession when you add the layers of the federal policies that have been implemented that are going to come home to roost very soon. So, and I do believe, and it's been my experience all of these years, that the planning staff has very much taken into account racial equity and those concerns in their recommendations. But what I have also felt is that our OLO process has evolved in a very productive and positive way. And at a high level, and I don't have any proposals today, and I won't have the opportunity to work on this moving forward, but it just strikes me that we need to include OLO and their team earlier in the process as you all begin to engage in communities, because you all need help. We have not provided a sufficient amount of staff and personnel resources to our incredible planning team. And I felt this very much during Thrive, during that entire process, which is why we actually hit the pause button on Thrive as we were discussing it. And this body and I, as council president at the time, took a lot of heat for pressing the pause button. But it felt appropriate at the time so that we could make sure that more voices are heard. It's never going to be perfect, but I do think that that's something that we'll want to tackle moving forward. And OLO, just on the council legislative process, it's been what we've done in my office is engaged OLO as early as we can, as I was considering, bills and legislation so that that input was brought in from the very beginning in context. Because OLO's at a disadvantage in that you have to react to an existing proposal, but that took years to develop and had a lot of engagement within that process. And so I think there's more we can do moving forward to provide more support for our planning staff and to acknowledge the very real concerns raised by a number of residents throughout this process who, let's face it, I mean, I don't have time to be weighing in on exactly what this body's doing or what the planning staff is doing. All of us are just trying to live our lives and hope and trust that the elected officials and policymakers that we've appointed and elected into these positions have our best interests in mind. So again, don't have a solution, but it just strikes me as we're thinking about all of this. But I do have just a couple of general high-level questions. So the other concern I have is we pick and choose. You've presented to us a general plan. We've modified it. We've made adjustments that I think are reasonable. But when you take something out, how does that impact the rest of the plan? And so I want to go back to Ms. Sanders' point that she just made now. And you may need more time to assess this, but if this amendment were to move forward, what would the impact be on the rest of the plan as it has been recommended, specifically with regards to transportation and safety, or any other elements of the plan as has been presented?
Thank you very much for that question. I think we can confidently say that the transportation safety issues are all along the corridor, both with the properties that are larger, where we have, for example, faith-based uses happening there today, but also the single-family homes that front these corridors. We actually see just really, really tricky and terrible situations going out there during the school hours in particular. We have folks that are lining up on the sidewalk against 6 lanes of traffic waiting for the bus. And that can be in front of a single family home, or it also can be in front of the high school. So I think from our perspective, changing the zone that makes, Ms. Dunn went over what the zone does earlier, to a neighborhood zone allows the buildings to be a little bit closer to the street, and also for us to implement the transportation safety improvements. It also creates what we call a little bit taller building heights, which slow people down because they feel this tunnel effect as they're driving down the corridor, which slows down speeds. And that's really the biggest killer, is when folks are speeding and we have young children also waiting right against those cars that are speeding really at a high speed. So I think our perspective is using this new zone, we feel, is going to be a really helpful tool to implement safety. And it will also give choices to folks for housing. So we actually see this as a really positive step, and I think that the PHP made some really important changes to respond to the community. So I think we're in a pretty good place at this point, but we obviously would entertain more thoughts that you all have. But once again, going back to the zoning, we do feel this zone is really, really important for improving safety.
And again, this is a broader context question, but how does this compare to previous master plans or recent master plans, these recommendations as compared to, and I know it's an apples and oranges comparison, every neighborhood is different for a variety of different reasons, but is this consistent, or how is it consistent with previous recommendations in other plans?
We do see a consistent theme in all of our corridor plans where we have these larger highways going through communities. And we really actually feel that communities deserve better. They deserve to have options for safer communities along the highways. And so I do think we see this theme across the county. This is not unique to University Boulevard. But what does make this a little bit different is that we have a lot of educational institutions along this stretch. Upwards of 6,000 young people in a given day are on this corridor. The largest high school in the state of Maryland, the gateway, to our county at Four Corners, is insufficient and unacceptable in terms of its safety, in terms of its walkability, and the way that those sidewalks lead to very important small businesses. So I guess to answer your question directly, how does this compare? There is a theme where we have large highways cutting through communities all throughout the county, but this is a bit different in that we have a lot of young people in this area, and it's our responsibility to make it safer for them.
And if I could add to that, and first I just want to say we appreciate everything you've brought to those 5 master plans over your time here. And we're going to miss you here in Rockville, but I know it's a little premature, but we look forward to welcome you with open arms to Wheaton headquarters in Wheaton. This is the first plan that we have taken through completely the whole entire process after the adoption of Thrive. And so there was a change in how we have to think about these plans. And so, with Thrive, the emphasis is on focusing on growth in our existing, commercial areas, our activity centers, and along our corridors. And so here we had our first opportunity to really take that corridor approach to a plan, a master plan, completely with the guidance of Thrive. And so this in some ways is a little bit unique. There have been other plans in Fairland that were informed by, some of the recommendations in Thrive, but that had started earlier than Thrive's adoption. And so I would say, this is kind of a first step in a new direction based on that guidance.
Thank you. Ms. Dunn?
The only thing that came to mind was my first plan here for the council was the Veers Mill Corridor Plan. And in that plan, we had some homes along the corridor that really did abut the corridor. We know we have a lot of the service roads there, but we had a handful of homes. And in that case, the tool we used was a floating zone to recommend CRN zoning for these properties. And what we realized is the floating zone, while, it's a tool and it's useful, it's relatively impractical for the single-family homeowner to get a local map amendment. It's a long process. It is actually a very expensive process, and it's much more expensive than even the optional method. So what I've seen in my 6 years is this evolution of, well, let's recommend a floating zone because this is the form we really want to take, and if these homeowners want to take advantage, they can ask for a rezoning, to a ZTA that was countywide, that is, okay, we're doing it countywide, we're not doing it by master plan, so let's make sure that there's a review, and we'll have the planning board involved with optional method. And now here we are after a 2 to 3 year master plan saying, we're still looking at corridors, we're still concerned with them, and here we have an option to do something that allows a property owner to do something very similar to these other instances, but to go to DPS and get a building permit for it. It would be interesting to see if this is like a really great option for our county, that people take advantage of it to do this in a way that provides protection but provides more housing, and provides it with less expensive process. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. So, just a couple closing thoughts. I'm, regardless of my unique set of circumstances today, would not be in a position to be able to support up or down this amendment at the moment, because I'd like to see and pull the string more on what the implications would be for the rest of the plan if the amendment were to move forward, and give you all an opportunity to formally respond to what that projection might look like, both in the short, medium, and long term. And I also just want to sort of close with this thought, and there'll be a lot more to discuss, later with regards to the plan this morning. But I do want to reinforce something I said at the beginning, and that is, how can we help planning staff do more on the front end so that we don't have the same conversation that we have over and over and over again, where people feel that they have been shut out or left out as part of the process. And sadly, disproportionately, the people that feel left out of the process are BIPOC communities. And so I think there's an opportunity for a stronger alliance moving forward. That's something I will be working on in the future from a different perspective, but I appreciate you all bringing these recommendations to us today.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz. I'm going to do Councilmember Katz, Councilmember Friesen, and Councilmember Sales, and then if it's okay with the body, move us forward.
I think we should move forward. I will try my best to be very, very fast. You mentioned, Ms. Sanders, that the safety concerns for the corridor, which I do agree with. But I have asked for, though I haven't seen an answer on this, if I missed it, I apologize. What safety concerns could be done right now without any changes that we could start, when we're talking about safety concerns, we shouldn't wait for a master plan. We shouldn't wait for rezoning. We should do safety concerns. What safety concerns could be done right now without any changes?
Thank you for that question. I think there are minor changes that could be implemented today that could be low cost, such as improved crosswalks. None of these actually are low cost, to be honest with you. Everything is, as you start to look at a transportation issue, you realize it's very complex. It's more than just painting a crosswalk. You need the ramps that lead to it. You need the traffic signalization. All of a sudden it becomes more costly. But I will add that we have some great examples of where we've seen transportation safety improvements go into place after a master plan. And one example I will give is Veers Mill Corridor. I think a number of you worked on that plan. We have the Bushy Drive recreational site that has added a lot of different mix of housing types and a very nice transportation safety improvement along the frontage of that. And that's a great example of how a master plan with new zoning and some new tools like Ms. Dunn described can really enable the transportation safety improvements to come forward with the housing. Because like I said, it's never just a quick fix per se. There's lots of pieces that go into it. You may paint a crosswalk, but that may require you to add a new traffic signal. You add a new traffic signal, you have to then upgrade all the ramps. All of these things can add up very quickly. So when we have a large project that can help us move that forward, that's really helpful. Because we know that we also don't want to put the burden on the private sector as well. So things like BRT are another way that we can see these things move ahead. But yes, to answer your question directly, there are certainly quick fixes, but I do think it's going to be more of a comprehensive approach, which is something like a master plan is really helpful for us to get there.
Well, I think we need both. I think we need what we can do right now and then discuss what should be and could be done in a better way or whatever through the plans of a master plan. And then did you say that a taller building slows down traffic?
Yes, I can speak to that. Alex Rixey, I'm a supervisor with the Transportation Planning Division. Yes, the idea is that both the form of the building and how close it is to the right-of-way can have an effect on the travel speed. The recommendations included in the plan also include street buffers between the sidewalk and the roadway that allow for street trees that also help to slow that down. So yes, specifically to your question about the buildings, having a higher building height that's closer to the right-of-way provides a sense of enclosure that encourages drivers to recognize the context they're in that has much more activity. They're much more likely to expect and anticipate that there are pedestrians in the area, as opposed to a wide open freeway where there are wide expanses and none of those potential conflicts. So giving that context helps to moderate the traffic.
I would submit it's not the height of that building, it's how close it is to the road. And that, I believe, is part of. And I believe that depending on how you build that building, if it's a parking lot in front, it's very different than if the parking lot is behind. So I have concerns about that. But getting back to the safety issues, I believe we need to figure out what safety issues we can do right now. And I understand some of them are costly. I understand, but when you're talking about a safety issue, what does the cost matter if you're talking about a safety issue, especially when you mentioned what 6,000 students are in this corridor? We need to do something, and we need, and if we're talking about that this would be implemented for a master plan, this might not be implemented in many ways for years. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilmember Friedson.
Thank you. Well, I'll start with the part that I totally agree with, which is making the immediate safety improvement to the extent that we can. We actually talked about this in committee yesterday, related and unrelated to this issue related to Glenmont, but also we brought in University Boulevard and asked for planning to provide with us within the next month a series of lower cost or cost effective safety improvements that could be made on corridors like this in key areas based on recent analysis that has been done in order to make some of these roadways safer. So I totally agree with that and appreciate it. You know, I did just want to note, this was a compromise. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez did not want to go on this compromise, and I appreciate the fact that ultimately she did. We have a committee recommendation. It's only on the abutting properties. The reason why that is so compelling was the suggestion emphatically by planning that this helps us to achieve the overarching goal of this plan, which is safety. And we sacrificed quite a bit of the housing density that we otherwise could have achieved by going deeper into the neighborhoods and into the community. And much of the recommendations, not just on this, but throughout the plan, was figuring out how do we balance some of the legitimate concerns that were raised with the primary focus on how do we achieve safety in a place that is not nearly as safe, as livable, as walkable as it should be and as we want it to be. And this is part of that. I just want to address a couple things quickly before we vote. There's a suggestion of overriding zoning. Just to be clear, the zoning text amendment that we took up is a countywide approach that we decided as a council to move forward with. In all of the urban areas of the county, there is no overriding of that. There is already zoning to allow for a different type of housing. It's the reason why the impacted properties don't include places like downtown Silver Spring, downtown Wheaton, even parts of the downtown, commercial corridor of Kensington, for instance. It's because they're already rezoned through master plans. And so they're not included in that. So it's not an overriding. It's the master plan process, which many community members understandably have advocated passionately for us only going through the master plan process of this, of which this is one. And the last thing that I just think is important to note, this is really at the center of the conversation of whether the status quo is acceptable or whether or not we want to make changes, then how do we make changes? That is complicated and it is nuanced. But it is a best practice to address exclusionary zoning. And even in the racial equity, social justice report, this statement is there. And I just want to note it because it wasn't mentioned today. I mentioned it in committee. I'm going to mention it again. Allowing multifamily housing in the proposed rezoning area could advance racial equity, social justice by eliminating an exclusionary zoning practice. Historically, single-family zoning has been used to maintain racially and economically segregated neighborhoods. As noted in the Res J Policy Handbook, exclusionary zoning policies, quote, increase the cost of housing and make them unaffordable to many BIPOC residents. Eliminating exclusionary zoning is recognized as a best practice in advancing Res J in housing. So I just want to center us in that question. We can have a debate, and it's a legitimate and important debate on exactly what we should be doing and how we should be doing it, but it's not necessarily a binary question of the status quo, which is what the amendment would push, based on the fact that we already have made a zoning text amendment change. That is the status quo. If we do not take this up, if we do not move forward with any changes, that is the status quo by definition, versus making a change. It's not what the planning board had put forward. It's not what some have asked. It doesn't go as far as even, some committee members, one committee member wanted. But it is, a way to move forward. So I just wanted to note that, and I will yield back to you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilmember Sales.
Thank you, and thank you all for your patience, because, I didn't get to attend the session, so I appreciate everyone meeting with me and answering all of our questions about this plan. Based on Circle 49, the chart about potential housing unit yields, the committee recommendation would yield 4,060. Councilmember Jawando's amendment would yield 3,780. So 280 more units with the committee recommendation. In addition to more density, we also have improved pedestrian safety. And so with Councilmember Jawando's, we would not get improved transportation or pedestrian safety.
So Councilmember Jawando's proposal is to retain the existing R90, R60, and our
the
proposal.
current height as well.
I believe it is the current height. Yes, yes. So our proposal with the CRN specific to the intent statement of that zone that Ms. Dunn read earlier is very focused on the pedestrian safety, and it does address the parking, which is also related to pedestrian safety in a way that other zones in the ordinance do not address. And so we do feel that that CRN zone is better for traffic safety.
Okay. So safer roads, more density, and more types of housing in any zone abutting the corridor, and more flexibility for homeowners to make decisions about how they want to have their homes, keep their homes, or upgrade or expand their homes. Okay. Thank you. Did anyone want to speak to that? I'm sorry.
Council
Madam
Vice President, and then we're going to call the vote. Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, just since the thrust of the question was around what I was proposing, the CRN zoning is part of the amendment in that around the multifamily and commercial properties. CRT, I'm sorry, CRT. So it's just not, I just want to be clear that the reason you're getting the yield is because there is a change in the zoning for large swaths of the planning area. Is that not correct, Ms. Sanders?
So the planning area, and I'm glad you asked this question, the planning area has some large institutional properties, and we are recommending that those institutional properties have CRT. But outside of those institutional properties, we have a lot of single-family homes, and we are recommending for those areas for it to be CRN. And so I think the amendment that we're discussing right now is that we feel that the CRN is more appropriate than retaining the R60, R90 because of the traffic safety. So overall, that family of CRT, CRN is all along this corridor, which really knits well with bringing more traffic safety.
Right, and I appreciate that. And my point was just that this does change the zoning for some of those properties, commercial and multifamily. And we also have the obviously the voluminous transportation sections that we're going to talk about, which also are connected. So Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to Ms. Sanders and to Councilmember Albanaz, who we are going to miss, for help pulling us back out again and understanding we are looking at a master plan and all these pieces fit together as you have thought about them. And so, Ms. Sanders, thank you very much for that. We have an amendment on the table right now, which would recommend the plan reconfirm existing zoning for the properties that we're looking at in Chapter 4. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. I have 1, 2, 3. All those opposed. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Abstaining. 1. Oh, you're abstaining. Oh, I'm sorry. 2 abstaining. So did we get 3, 4, 2 abstaining, 6 against? Did I do the math? Yeah. All right.
Is that 11?
That's 11, I think. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Plus 2.
Yeah. All right. All right. So now getting back to the zoning, Ms. Dunn, just to bring us all back up to, thank you, Ms. Payne. Thank you very much for your work. Appreciate it. Back up to speed on Chapter 4, what we were discussing and moving forward, just to make sure everybody, just make sure nobody has any other questions on the Chapter 4 and these changes.
Okay. So recap.
Yeah.
What you see on the summary chart, that's just a little easier, and you all have a printed copy, is the second row under Chapter 4, Land Use, Zoning, and Urban Design. And it basically gives you all the page numbers where this amendment occurs. You've just now voted. so I'm not going to repeat it every time we go through every one of the districts and neighborhoods because it is consistently the same. And then we will just move forward with all of the recommendations from the PHP committee as they made changes to either a recommendation related to land use and zoning or to the urban design recommendations. Is that appropriate? Okay, so if you continue looking at this page, you will see that there are just some minor editing changes related to the WTOP property. Again, it gets back to just master plan language that should be more guidance oriented than regulatory, so using a word like should instead of must. Same with the one below that, which is about redevelopment around intersections. They should strive to implement, and then there's a large list of concepts below that. Again, these were tweaks by the committee to make sure things are operating like a master plan. If we turn the page, we have a committee recommendation. This is related to urban design language for the Inwood House neighborhood, and more specifically about the Glen Haven Elementary School. And they modified it just to make sure that, one, they can a recommendation in there related to making improvements to anything that would happen near that surface parking lot, but that it wouldn't be predicated on a redevelopment of the school property itself or the school building itself. Next. Okay, so we're on the second page of the summary. You are going to see 8 of the next recommendations are all related to the boundary change related to the Kent Mill Shopping Center, and it's simply removing language or making an edit to language to make sure that as we remove those properties, the recommendations in the plan are consistent with that. Is there any question on any of those? Relatively straightforward. We're on page 3. We're in the Brewood Park neighborhood now, and there was a recommendation related to property that is at the end of a right-of-way at Brewood Road and Ten Brook Drive, and the committee had a lot of discussion about this in discussion with the park staff, and just wanted to make it clear what part of this unimproved right-of-way they were talking about and what they intended to happen there. So this is just language for clarity on the second row of page 3 or circle 63. There's no comments. The next has to do with relative to the HOC property. There is language related to redevelopment, basically of parks in general, or properties adjacent to parks, and the zoning ordinance does allow alternatives that allow for a payment rather than providing on-site open space because you have an adjacent park, so the on-site open space isn't always necessary. They make a contribution that goes within the plan area to facilitate parks. That's just clarifying language to make sure it's consistent, and you'll see that again somewhere else in the plan, either once or twice more. The 2 edits on page 62 are really to remove anything related to properties that don't abut University Boulevard, as that was the committee's recommendation to stick with abutting, so those aren't necessary. We're not going farther into the neighborhoods with rezoning. At this point, I'm at the bottom of circle 63 or bottom of page 3, and we're getting into the properties that are in the Four Corners neighborhood and Four Corners district. There are multiple neighborhoods there, and this is where the committee did spend a lot of time talking about different heights, what's their relationship to the neighboring residential properties, and how and what are the property owners, did they weigh in about any of these things. So the first one you'll see there is about rezoning properties. They give the addresses, and it really is about these are in the median. If you think about the Four Corners area, this is the median section that has the McDonald's and the 7-Eleven, and it's a recommendation for zoning where the committee changed the height from 75 feet to 65 feet. The next one has to do with the Safeway property, and I have a typo here, and I'm very sorry for that in translating this. You'll see that it recommends the recommendation for CRT of 3, C of 1.5, R of 2.5, and a height of 65 feet. I only edited the 65 feet, but actually the whole zoning there should be edited more. So let me read it to you. What the committee recommended is CRT of 2.25 with a C of 1.5 an R, a residential FAR of 1.5 and the height of 65. And this is consistent with what was in the public hearing draft. And I just didn't capture it. I captured what was in the planning board draft, not the public hearing draft, but the committee had made this recommendation that I just stated. The next are the Postal Service property, which is next door to the Safeway. Again, the committee, you'll see it's consistent with the zoning that I just read to you, but the height goes down a little more at 60 feet. The BP property and the Shell gas station, again, the recommendation from the committee is to reduce those heights to 60. And then you'll see on page 66, planning staff has assisted us and provided to the committee language that further enhances how the Safeway property under redevelopment should transition to the neighborhood behind it. So that is added text to the plan. And then following that, we have properties at Colesville Road and Sutherland Road. Those are having a reduction in height to 60. Same with if you turn the page, either page 5 or circle 65. The commercial properties at 101 University Boulevard, also recommended for 60 feet in height. The commercial properties at University Boulevard West from 105 to 111. Those are, again, this goes back to the public hearing draft, recommended zoning with a height of 60 feet. And then there's the next one, which were properties, these are pretty much at the corner of Colesville Road. I don't know if I have a map if you want to see these. This became a conversation about reducing height here, and sorry I didn't circle back on this as we finished at the 4th work session. I should have, but we had 2 different recommendations from the 2 committee members in attendance. One was for 60 feet in height, one was for 70 feet. So I don't know if we want to make a motion to pick one of those 2.
Folks, we're on page 5, page circle 65. It's row 3. There is a split recommendation from the committee, and I'll let Council Vice President Joando weigh in.
Yeah, I was in China on this one, and so I didn't vote, but I would have voted with Council Member Franny Gonzalez and to do the 2.25, 1.5, 60. I think that's right.
Okay. Just make the motion.
So I'll move that.
I have a motion. So I have a motion on the table to recommend the CRT 2.25, C 1.5R, 1.5, a height of 60. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, it's page. On in,
Page 5.
it's in the chart.
And page 67.
Oh, in the packet.
On the plan. The pages in the chart are the plan page.
Circle 65.
Circle 65.
Page 17,
Page 17.
of the packet. Yeah. 17 in the packet.
17. Take your time. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to try to make this easy. I'm happy to support. I originally thought, and preferred 70 feet, was compelled by what we heard from planning, but there's now a pseudo 2-to-1 committee vote, and I will. And it's 10 feet. I mean, it's essentially, do we allow for 10 feet or 60 feet or 70 feet? It slightly changes what you can build there and the amount of housing density that you would get there. The main argument that was made during committee was if you did what could be a likely potential higher density outcome, you'd be slightly above 60 feet because of 18 feet 2-story platform over concrete and then stick construction above that. And by going to 70 feet, you essentially would allow for that type of housing construction. But I don't think it's a big enough difference from my perspective to fight over this and argue with this. So I'm happy to yield to what is now the articulated preference of the committee's majority. So it needs a motion because there wasn't a formal committee report, but I'm just noting for colleagues that I'm going to support in respect to the committee majority at this point.
I have a motion by Council Vice President Joando. Did someone second it? Council Member Natalie Fanning Gonzalez seconded it. Any more discussion? Councilmember Mink, are you good? Okay, good. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand, and that's unanimous.
Thank
you,
you.
Ms. Dunn.
Sorry for that oversight. We are now going to the next row down, which has to do with the Woodmore Shopping Center. You'll see here that the committee made a recommendation to change the zoning and height there as well. And this is in line with, again, the public hearing draft that was presented to the community.
Sorry, Councilmember Mink.
Yeah, as indicated in the committee session, I'm going to make a motion to retain the existing zoning and height for the Woodmore Shopping Center. The owner has indicated that they have no intentions of redeveloping, and this is something that we could return to if that changes in the future. Meanwhile, the community has been very clear about that would be their preference, and it is right along abutting residential properties currently, where they already have the conflicts with the development there in regards to, well, there's a lot of that the neighbors are dealing with for being right up against a commercial property currently.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to retain, thank you, the original that was in the plan. Any other, Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to stick with the committee recommendation. This mall is very different from the situation in Kent Mill. Kent Mill Shopping Center is ways off University Boulevard, and it's a unique shopping center because of the cultural and cultural offerings there. This is different. And I think that what the committee landed on is reasonable, and we actually didn't agree with the planning board suggestion. We went back to the public hearing draft on this one. And I'm just going to stick with it and vote no on the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Sales?
Yes. So the current height is the 100?
No, the
or
current,
the 40?
Yeah, the current zoning is a CRT of 0.75, a C of 0.75, residential of 0.5, and a height of 40 feet. And the
Okay.
recommendation is highlighted in red there in the middle of the page. The planning board had recommended a height of 100. Yeah, the
Okay.
committee reduced it to 60.
40. Yeah. Okay. Not change it. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Albanese?
Sorry, did the developer ever ultimately weigh in? I know did they ever provide formal comment or feedback on their intentions or anything that might be helpful?
Good morning, Jessica McVeary, Planning Supervisor with our East County Division. In our engagement with the property owner, they did not indicate that they had plans for any near-term or mid-term development on this site. We felt as though this was an opportunity in looking at a 20-year plan to zone the property appropriately, given the proximity to planned bus rapid transit on University Boulevard and active bus rapid transit on Colesville Road, and to accommodate infill development on the parking lot, should they be interested in doing that over the next 2 decades.
Artie Hirsch, Chair of the Planning Board, also gives more flexibility and it reduces costs down the road. If someone wanted to redevelop it, they'd have to go through a local map and get this, when the cost of doing that and the timing and the uncertainty, this is the time to do it when you were doing this master plan.
Just comment, it's a little bit of, in my opinion, 6 one, half dozen the other. The development projects are very challenging right now, especially in the current market. And so I'm not surprised that there's no interest in the shorter midterm. Shorter midterm relative to a project like this probably outlives the life cycle of the master plan that we are discussing. So, but I do acknowledge adding it as a potential incentive could create a mechanism for them to be able to redevelop if they so chose. But I also very much am sensitive to the community concerns, particularly in that area.
Councilmember Mink?
Just wanted to add additionally, and thank you for the emphasis on the community concerns, that I have heard from a significant number of community members. And as someone who grew up in this neighborhood myself, also the small businesses that exist there really are treasures. So many of them are ones that we grew up walking to already, and there are great concerns about there being disruption to that in addition to the, to the development concerns. Thank you.
Great, not seeing any other questions or comments. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. I have 1, 2, 3. Oh, wait. All right. That's all right. All right. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The amendment passes. All right. Right. Retaining the current.
Okay, thank you. You'll see that the next recommendation is in line with the same shopping center, and it is to add back a recommendation that there is a future evaluation of the Woodmore Shopping Center for listing in the master plan for historic preservation. That had been in the public hearing draft. It was removed by the planning board, and the committee is recommending unanimously to put that back. Okay. Sorry.
Thank you. I think we're about to move on to housing, right? I have a general comment before we, one more.
Actually,
One more, okay.
So,
Sorry.
yeah, we do have one more here.
Okay, sorry. All right, the
And then
cross-referencing got me.
actually, I wasn't going to move to housing. I know that it's next in the chart because that's how the plan moves sequentially, but in the staff report, we do transportation next because there was just so much conversation around land use zoning and transportation that we covered them first. So, not housing next, but one more zoning change, which is related to the Four Corners Ethiopian Evangelical Church. There's a typo here. I do apologize. The recommendation is to CRT. It's 2.5. The 2 in the 2.25 is wrong. It should just be 2.5. C of 1.5, R of 1.5, and a height of 65, because this mirrors the recommendation from the committee for the other property that's across Colesville in the median, so that the two median properties have the same zoning. So it was just my typo to put 2.25 there.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. Now, Mr. Kenny, you're in the hot seat. Oh, all right. Councilmember Mink.
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to note that this neighborhood includes some local businesses who we've heard from who are concerned about being made non-conforming by language in the overlay zone about prohibited uses as related to drive-throughs and filling stations. So I wanted to see if there's openness to put language in the plan later in the overlay zone to make clear that any prohibitions on commercial uses would be prospective only, and that we grandfather or legacy and existing uses as conforming. And if this is something that we should address now, or if staff would need time to come up with language that could address that, but just wanted to make sure that we raise that concern and find a time to address it.
So a great place to put that is there's an implementation chapter, and the implementation chapter has a section on zoning and has even a section on the overlay zone. So we can draft some language that would support that would go in that implementation section.
Excellent.
Later in the plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so Mr. Kenny, we'll move on to transportation.
Thank you. We don't have as much intro or background for the transportation section. We've sort of touched on a lot of Vision Zero and pedestrian safety topics. I will provide some minimal level context for each of the recommendations, but in the interest of going quickly, we'll mostly stick to the committee recommendations. If there's desire for additional context, we can provide that. And there's some additional in the staff report as well as the circle pages. So the first section regards the complete street classifications. This section was not listed as a set of recommendations in the plan as such, although council staff pulled it out as a recommendation, as there was one new action taken in this plan. Mostly these classifications are as they were approved by the council in the master plan on highways and transitways, with one exception. The University Boulevard outside of the town center areas is recommended to be converted from a boulevard to a growth corridor boulevard. This road type of growth corridor boulevard was created in the master plan of highways and transitways process, but the assignment of which roads would be designated as such was left to the master planning process. So this master plan designates it as a University Boulevard outside of town centers as a growth corridor boulevard, as it meets the definition in the master plan of highways and transitways of a boulevard where a, quote, vast majority of the segment is zoned a mix of moderate and high density. And the committee recommended this, approving this. Moving on to the street network recommendations. This was, the committee spent a good deal of time talking about each of these recommendations, which the vast majority of which are on page 21 of the staff report. These recommendations would realign some existing intersections, connect some streets that do not currently connect across University Boulevard, and then connect some streets that are currently in segments parallel to University Boulevard. The committee made a couple changes. First, they included language clarifying that the connection between the access road and Ten Brook Drive would not connect all the way through to Ten Brook Drive South, but would rather be a site entrance for the Northwood Presbyterian Church property in the case of redevelopment there. And it also removed the Greenock Road and Royalton Road connection from that section and moved it into the following section, which the committee changed from connecting parallel streets to implementing paved trail connections. So this is something Councilmember Friedson talked about in his introduction, but essentially the plan recommended a number of connections parallel to University Boulevard to be vehicle connections. The committee recommends that these instead be paved trail connections. The committee also recommended removing the traffic calming elements that were part and parcel with these street connections, but following at the bottom of page 21 and at the top of page 22 of the staff report, there are additional traffic calming measures in place that the committee approved with one note that the committee made textual changes to the channelized right turn recommendation, essentially clarifying that this is not removing turn lanes, but rather reconfiguring those turn lanes to be no longer channelized. Moving on, so that was the street network recommendations. Moving on to the I-95 interchange recommendations. This is now moving to the bottom of page 22, top of page 23. The committee recommended changing the language for the hawk signals at the intersections and at the pedestrian ramps of the I-495 interchanges to more strongly install these coordinated signals rather than consider them. The committee also recommended in the long-term recommendations for these interchanges to clarify the order of operations between the 90-degree intersection recommendations and the grade separated pedestrian and bicycle crossing. These are sort of different types of solutions to the same problem, clarifying that the less intensive solution would be pursued first, and the grade separated crossings would be another option. Moving on to the Four Corners street network. This is probably the item that this is definitely the item that the committee spent the most time and energy examining. The planning board draft recommends a near-term and long-term vision for Four Corners street network. The planning board's approach most of the detail here is in the near term, so this is most of what we're talking about. We'll talk about the long term in a minute. This is the near term. The planning board recommends a two-phased approach, the first phase of which installs bus lanes through Four Corners and makes some modest pedestrian improvements. Phase 2 widens the right-of-way of University Boulevard, couplet through Four Corners to make pedestrian improvements in addition to those bus priority facilities. The committee also considered two other proposals, one by Councilmember Mink that would look similar to Phase 1 with the modest pedestrian improvements and remaining same vehicle lanes, but not having the dedicated bus lanes. And then the public hearing draft, which the committee recommended unanimously, was to repurpose one travel lane in each direction to provide wide, low-stress facilities for those walking, biking, and rolling. Both of these latter two options would not have a Phase 2 and would not require additional right-of-way. The summary, an illustrative summary of these recommendations can be found on the top of page 24 in the staff report, where there is a greater display of the right-of-way widths and types of pedestrian and cyclist facilities, as well as transit lanes in the case of the planning board, that would be included in each of these options. I will note that the committee requested further options for Councilmember Mink's proposal that would eliminate the areas where planning believes that this proposal would lead to 2-foot buffers. The committee wanted options for wider buffers through that area. Planning staff have provided a memo on circle pages 40 to 54 detailing how part of that stretch could be the buffer could be increased to 6 feet, resulting in a 6-foot sidewalk where the previous recommendation was 10 feet. Planning staff recommends against this for a number of reasons, but that is an option as well as a modified version of Councilmember Mink's proposal. There is a great deal of detail we have available based on committee discussions for buffers and tree planting and soil volume, but for now I'll leave it at that and pause here if there's any
Mr. Kent, could you just clarify the committee's recommendation that's before us? Sorry, there's
Yes,
a lot of back and
apologies.
forth, and
Yes.
I want to know, what did the committee recommend to us, please?
Yes, so the committee's recommendation, as it appears in on the top of page 24, is option C, the public hearing draft that would repurpose one travel lane in each direction to create sort of these complete streets design guide, bicycle master plan, pedestrian master plan, standard wide pedestrian and bicyclist facilities
Okay.
through Four Corners.
That's what we have before us. It was a unanimous vote. Councilmember Mink.
Thank you, Madam President. I did want to note, as raised in committee, that I and the community do have serious concerns about the traffic flow here, which is already pretty bad. At the same time, understanding the importance of pedestrian improvements, which I know that I and the community also feel very strongly is badly needed. So I appreciate the conversation that has been had at committee, and understand that there has been consensus there. I'm continuing to have conversations with the community about it, and so I will let colleagues and staff know if I have intent to bring a motion or further discussion at the next council session. But do want to note that it has been very clear that if what is going to happen is that we are going to lose a travel lane, the preference would be that the reason for that would be to go to pedestrian safety as opposed to a dedicated bus lane. So I will note appreciation for that conversation. At the same time, I know that we're still weighing that against the traffic concerns and seeing if there may be a viable additional option. And so, as noted, if I'm going to bring a motion to the next session, I will make sure to let colleagues and staff know prior to doing that. Thank you.
Councilmember Glass.
I appreciate the committee's deliberation on this. I have serious concerns every time I see students pour out of Northwood and Blair High School. Just drive down. My heart skips a beat every time I see them crossing any one of those streets through, and that bookends the corridor. And so, as Nancy Pelosi says, do it for the kids. We got to do it for the kids. And some of the other considerations we'll be getting to in the transportation and with the BRT concept and all of that, but I have not weighed in on any of the other improvements that have been made up until this point, but definitely understand the give and take that is here. Understand that along the corridor there are a lot of homes that are dead-end streets that abut University, and the complete disruption and complete transformation that some of the complete street grid ideas would have meant for that community. It's not about a new building, but a completely new design. And again, thoughtful deliberation there and support the committee's recommendation. But we got to do this for the kids. Thanks.
Thank you. Council Vice President Joando.
Thank you. I'll be brief and just say I appreciate the colleagues' discussion on committee on this, in that we prioritize the safety here, and it's a big, like you said, biggest high school there at Blair. It's unacceptable the amount of space that's there for those kids to cross the street, and we need to err on the side of giving them a lot more space. And I appreciate Councilmember Mink also just trying to balance traffic flow. But I agree, like if it's not for a bus lane, it should be for safety, pedestrian, bike, roll, walk. And so I'll stick with that and I'm glad we were able to come to consensus. Thank you.
Councilmember Friedson?
Yeah, appreciate it. I'll just echo the comments. I was hopeful we could find a way to advance pedestrian safety, as Councilmember Mink was attempting to do. Appreciate the fact that we were able to come to consensus as a committee, prioritizing safety, which was the overarching theme of what we tried to do throughout this entire plan. The main issue was 2 feet of a buffer, which is an unacceptable level of a buffer. And as we think about a number of the road deaths that we have had from bicyclists and others, it has been because of a lack of a buffer or an inadequate buffer. It is perhaps the single most important safety issue that exists on major thoroughfares like this one. And so that's what made it untenable and why the committee couldn't move forward with in alternatives. I just wanted to, as potential other options move forward, that was the central issue and challenge that we faced, that we were trying to address. If there is an option that provides an adequate buffer that would achieve safety that we need, I am beyond open to that. I would love to see that, but if we can't, then ultimately the safety issue is just too overwhelming and compelling to not address. So I'll yield back.
Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez?
Just very quickly to say that I'm gonna stick with the public hearing draft option C. I'm very proud of my colleagues in PHP for doing the right thing. When we talk about Vision Zero, it shouldn't be just a talking point. This is taking action. Yes, we're gonna have congestion. It is an urban area. It is expected. We shouldn't apologize about that. We need to be direct and really embrace that change needs to happen if we want to transform this boulevard and make sure people are safe to walk by, roll, and take transit. My kids are going to be going to Northwood High School in a couple of years. I will not change my position no matter what other amendment comes in front of us. I'm just going to put that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say, watching the committee and all the deliberations, I very much appreciate the time you spent with this. As somebody who was a parent of 2 people who went through Blair, this was my nightmare. I'm not exaggerating. This is not hyperbole here. And every time I drive through this area, so if there is a proposal, but I want to just thank the committee for their thoughtfulness and really prioritizing young people's safety here, because there are other places of this plan that I'd be like, okay, I'll defer to local or whatever, even though I want to go somewhere else. This is not one of them. I just want to thank PHP and Councilmember Mink for the thoughtfulness, but this we have to prioritize the safety. Councilmember Mink, I think you wanted to go back to something, or yeah, okay.
I appreciate the conversation and I appreciate the thoughtfulness. And I will note also that I think I'm the only person here who walked to Blair High School as a student myself. So I walked through this intersection. I dodged those vehicles and wished that on no student, but even more so, perhaps, no parent. I have kids who I expect will be doing the same, and I have kids who, as of now, go to preschool have gone to preschool at that church, right in the center of the median there. And we have had desire to bike with them and to walk with them. And you just there's no way to do that without having your heart in your throat, as somebody said earlier. So, of course, that is the world that all of us want to live in. So it is with that in mind that I approach these conversations as well. Importantly, looking for balance, which I think is part of it's obviously that is our job, and that balance, of course, does have to include the safety of our young people. So that is also the approach that I bring to these conversations, and I appreciate my colleagues.
Great. I think Councilmember Mink, you asked to go back to something we went by.
Yeah, with apologies. I was looking at the in the complete streets section. If we could just hop back to that, the street network recommendations section. The bullet points there, looking at the bullet points under the 3.0 recommendations. There is a part first that I had thought, if I had recollected correctly, that I believe that the committee had removed, but please correct me if I'm wrong. A few down, it says repurpose general purpose travel lanes. I'm in my personal notes, so let me go find that. 20, yes, thanks. 20, and so this bullet point itself is on the top of 22, the very top bullet point on page 22 of the staff packet. The repurposed general purpose travel lanes to provide dedicated transit lanes and improved facilities. I thought that if I had recollected correctly, but maybe I'm wrong, that the committee had struck that.
I don't believe so. I believe the committee recommended concurring.
There may have been a similar one.
There is another recommendation in the near-term vision to within Four Corners, and this is on page 25, the second bullet at sort of the top of that page, to minimize crossing distances by repurposing travel lanes. Council staff had noted that recommendation would have needed to change if option B was chosen. That is not ultimately what the committee went with, so that recommendation remains as a concurring recommendation of the plan.
Okay, thank you. The other one that I wanted to check on is the first bullet point in that section, implement a connected network of streets. And this was in, as related to the discussion that we have, pedestrian safety, of course, just that is at the top. I think that's on page 20, I want to say, 21. That's the first bullet point under the committee recommends 3.0 on page 21 of the staff packet. And suggesting that if we could clarify the language here to reflect the committee discussion in regards to the connections that we're talking about in this section being, trail connections, paved walking connections, as opposed to vehicular connections between the university and the neighborhood's streets.
Right. It's a few mostly paved trail connections, as well as several intersection realignments. If the council would like, when we bring back the draft resolutions at the next work session, we can have language that clarifies the intent of this section.
Yeah, just to clarify, we rejected the street grid, as you know.
Exactly.
We did accept some of the alignments where one roadway, on one side of University didn't properly connect with another roadway, and so at redevelopment we suggested that they be aligned so that it be turned into a T. That's different than the street network recommendation, which turned cul-de-sacs and dead-end roads into through streets. And so I think the intent here, at least, was for it to reflect the continued realignment, as we did recommend, but I think we could refine the language. I mean, it's ultimately the resolution that we're going to approve, but I think refining the language could
I
make
think
sense.
I'm just foreseeing community members potentially being confused and concerned when the intent of the committee, and I expect the intent of the council with this language is to do what was just discussed. So
and right below it is what is being referenced here: the Markwood Drive, Dayton, and Nicholas, Eisner, et cetera.
Yeah.
So if possible, to just come back with slightly refined language.
Just be a technical change.
Exactly.
And we're happy to take care of that.
Much appreciate. Okay, I yield.
All right. Council Vice President Jawando.
Very briefly, and just to your point, we did have a pretty in-depth discussion. I think there was consensus around, to the extent that there are connections outside of the street grid, they should be paved trail connections, not vehicular connections, and that is below there in red, right, in the third bullet on the same page. Correct, Mr. Kenny? I just wanted to make sure I'm not. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
All right, where are we? Let's go back to, I believe we're on page 25.
We are on page 23. Sorry, yes, it is 25. Regarding the near-term vision for Four Corners, the committee also recommended language to evaluate options for improving transit performance through Four Corners. These options may include transit signal priority or relocating bus stops. This was in reaction to removing the bus lane conversation or component and trying to go with MCDOT's concerns regarding bus performance. And the committee also recommended removing the long-term vision for the Four Corners Street Network. This long-term vision was the remnant of the original street grid concept, a sort of longer-term, vaguer, study of that. And the committee was, resolute in its, recommendations for what it envisioned for Four Corners, and so did not see this long-term vision as relevant any longer.
Continue.
Thank you. So the next section is the transit recommendations. The committee concurred with the thrust of the planning board's recommendations, but requested language clarifying that this plan is not providing the transit lanes, because that was done in a previous plan. It is reaffirming the previous recommendations. There's a whole lot of language there on the bottom of page 25, essentially all getting at that point. Okay. Moving on to the bicycle and pedestrian network recommendations, the committee recommended removing the recommendation to fund the University Boulevard downtown Wheaton to Four Corners Town Center BIPA in the CIP. This is a matter of process of not binding the council's decision making in a master plan for future budgetary decisions. And the committee also recommended removing the Kent Mill Shopping Center bike share station, just as a matter of the Kent Mill Shopping Center no longer being in the plan area per the committee's recommendations. And other than that, the committee concurred with the planning board, and those are the transportation recommendations.
Terrific. Thank you so much. And now we're on page 27 on housing.
Great.
Sorry, Council Vice President Joando.
I just want to make a quick comment. Thank my colleague. That went really fast, but there was a lot that went into those transportation recommendations. But I think it underscores how much agreement and there is making this corridor safer and doing a lot of things. And the work of the planning department and my colleagues. So I just wanted to say that. I felt like it was unjust not to say that.
Okay, Ms. Dunn.
Great, thank you. We are now going to turn to housing, and I will note one thing, that the summary chart I gave you did leave off one of the amendments from the PHP committee, so I'll cover that first. It's also the first one that you see in the staff report. So if we're on page 27 of the staff report, the housing section is broken, housing chapter, is broken into sections on affordable housing, preservation, and production. And under the first one, the committee was unanimous in approving recommendations related to the provision of 15% MPDUs for new development in this plan area. There was language related to prioritizing greater percentages of more affordable units under the optional method. And then there was a third recommendation related to public properties. This has been in the last 3 to 4 master plans, consistent language that the council has approved, that the master plans basically require a public property to provide a minimum of 30% MPDUs with 15% affordable to households earning the MPDU level and 15% affordable to households below that. In the plan here, it said strive to provide that, and the committee took out the words strive to, noting that in all other previous master plan it has been a requirement, so they want to continue that. That's the one I forgot to put in the chart. And then there's a fourth recommendation to support permanent and temporary supportive housing for people experiencing homelessness. Those were all recommended 3-0 by the committee.
Okay, all right.
There's the next one is preservation of affordable housing. Again, the committee's recommendations were unanimous in approving them, and they relate to preserving existing market rate affordable, exploring and leveraging partnerships, and then working with private property owners and working with the Housing and Community Affairs to extend any current federal and county subsidies. And then the final section, housing production and housing diversity. You'll see this on page 28. There's 2 recommendations there. There was a slight just edit to the second one to remove utilize CRT and CRN as primary zones. again, just noticing that introducing new residential typologies could occur also in other zones, and not to limit it to that. And then there's an added, it's in red text, an added recommendation from the committee, which is really related to, and has been in other recent master plans, trying to get at how do we recognize that displacement could be an issue, or how do we prevent it, especially when we see large rental structures being renovated. And so adding the last bullet there. And then in this section as well, the council received an addendum that was placed online on Friday late, and it has two pieces of language in it. They're on page 3 of the addendum. The one at the very top is more general language. It would go in the housing chapter. But the second piece, the second language is actually a recommendation. It would go in this section, and it is to facilitate the production of workforce housing units, furthering mixed income development, and supporting projects that provide units affordable at the county's workforce housing levels. So those would be added.
Great. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to move these amendments. This is a conversation that we have been having for years, really, at this point, I feel. And it's actually making sure that the spirit of the corridor GTA that we worked on in past a few months ago can be reflected in this sector plan. So respectfully, I ask the full council to consider these recommendations.
I think I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the amendments, please raise your hand. And that is unanimous. All right, thank
Great.
you.
So we'll move forward. The next we have our parks, trails, and open space. And in this section, the plan has really focused on parks by park name and provides recommendations. The first one is Wheaton Forest Local Park. The committee recommends unanimously to approve these recommendations with the edits noted in the staff report. This gets back to that language that wants to make sure it references the zoning ordinance related to contribution, so that is consistent. Another one was a modest change to language related to redevelopment of properties adjacent to parks, and instead trying to strive not to place parking lots or dumpsters next to parks, and to provide screening in cases where that can't be achieved. The next is Sligo Creek Stream Valley Park recommendations. Again, you'll see that on page 29. The only edit to this section that the committee included, and they unanimously approved these recommendations, was just the removal of some references to the properties that have been taken out of the plan boundary. Those were the sixth recommendation. The next is property that is Maryland DOT and State Highway Administration land that is next to the Northwood Chesapeake Bay Trail, and there's a recommendation here related to the parks, to the property in that trail, that there's consolidated management and maintenance of that area by the Parks Department to ensure that it's protected and continues as a trail route. Okay, the next is North Four Corners Local Park. Again, the committee approved these with some minor edits. There was the second bullet here included a part of it that said if projects provide 25% or more MPDUs that receive either an exemption or discount from development impact taxes, the contribution that can be made in lieu of providing open space may be reduced proportionally. And while the committee thinks this is potentially a change that might be useful for the code, it might want to be something that the council considers countywide and not just in this master plan or to this particular property, and so decided to not include it in this master plan here. In addition, it would also go into the zoning code, so something to think about in the future and to change in the general chapter where the language related to how you can do an alternative payment is located. So that would apply everywhere. And then there's a slight change again. It's the same change that was made in the prior park to the relationship of parks to non-park property. The next is Pinecrest Local Park. The committee approved recommendations related to it and its interpretive signs. It's a historic resource, the recreation center there. And then finally one related to open space. The committee unanimously supported unchanged. If we move to the environmental sustainability chapter, this is also broken into sections. It is very robust. It is it's very inspiring when you read this chapter, like all the things that could be put forward to make this corridor a better, more environmentally friendly place. And the committee recommended approval of these with only very minor changes to a couple words. Practicable instead of feasible is all that I see. If you have a chance to read through them, they are impressive, and if implemented, would greatly change the corridor significantly in an environmental way.
Council Vice President Girondo.
I missed my window here, but I just wanted to mention it for colleagues, and I'm not going to propose anything today, but the no net loss conversation, that was in the housing section, right? Is that correct?
The
language around strive. I just feel like it's important to mention.
Okay.
Where was that?
So we had language about striving for public properties that must provide affordable housing. There is also
right. We
language at the bottom of page 27.
Okay, I wasn't that far off. Okay.
That the committee approved to preserve existing market rate affordable where practicable, striving for no net loss of market rate affordable in the event of redevelopment.
Right. So just to mention one, but the one you just talked about on public land, we've done the thing which I did on the first a long time ago on Veers Mill, the 15 and 15, and then under 50% for the other 15. There was a discussion, this is for colleagues at the bottom of page 27, the first bullet, around how do you preserve affordable housing in the corridor. In the bullet that was included, says preserve existing market rate affordable housing, of which there is much in this corridor, over more than normal, where practicable, striving for no net loss of market rate affordable housing in the event of redevelopment. I had brought this up here, and I brought it up in other plans that we could require no net loss for a development to come forward for either the multifamily, in the case of the Warwick, or you could say for everything. I brought up a proposal in the ZTA conversation around the corridor ZTA around making one of the duplexes affordable to the returning person. I just want to mention in the context of the big multifamily, I do still have this concern that the planning board could approve a proposed redevelopment of the Warwick, which is that does not have to have no net loss with this language. And again, we want it to happen. I understand that. I will reiterate that concern. I would like to see us try to get a little more strong than striving. Ms. Devoni can respond. I'm not going to propose anything. I just think it's important because it's an issue that I'm concerned about.
For the record, Lisa Gavoni with Montgomery Planning Supervisor.
You talk about rental agreements and stuff.
Sure, I can touch on all of those things. So the no net loss language has been included in a lot of our previous master plans, starting with we included in Great Seneca, Tacoma Park Minor Master Plan Amendment. It's been standard boilerplate language. We haven't seen any projects redevelop under this language. However, we have seen a project very recently that has come in with rental agreements in the case of redevelopment of existing market rate affordable housing. Rental agreements are a little bit higher level of restricted units. They're about at 80% area median income. The question at hand is, does this language preclude DHA from negotiating for that? The answer is no. We feel fairly strongly that this needs to be a site-by-site discussion. There are certain conditions on each site that may preclude the no net loss. Certainly we will push for it, well feasible, but sometimes, replacing, for example, the Warwick 395 units and a redevelopment is not going to be feasible. Even HOC's model is 30% affordable. So asking projects, market rate developers to provide upwards of 50, 60% affordable without sufficient density, height to achieve a realistic target, I think is not feasible. One of the first plans we had this discussion was the Veers Mill plan. We worked with the property owners on how Pine View to include language, but there was another site in that plan where they were not able to reach no net loss because they had infrastructure issues. We think that needs to be part of the discussion every time one of these projects comes in. Certainly we want DHC to push for it. Certainly we will push for it, but it has to be a discussion on a site-by-site basis. We feel.
I appreciate you bringing it up, and just wanted to have my colleagues hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sales.
So if we change the language from strive to require no net loss, it would require any new redevelopment to create the same amount of affordable housing that's currently there if they were to redevelop.
Yeah, it would. So take the Warwick, for example. Currently today, there are 395 units. If you say there can be no net loss of affordable units, and those are all counted as affordable, then the new development coming forward would have to provide 395 MPDUs.
Mm-hmm.
Or however you want to structure it, but still regulated affordable units. If under the current zoning that's being recommended in the plan, it's a 2 FAR, and it's a very large site. If you calculate how many new units that can be, it's anywhere from 600 to 700 units, depending on how large they are. That is anywhere from a 56 to 65% affordable housing requirement. And you just heard from Ms. Gavoni that HOC provides it at 30%. We as a county, when we have language, we require it at 30% of a public property. So to think about it on not a case by case where there's some room to figure this out, if you just said this is a requirement, you would probably not get redevelopment of that site at all, because the private property owner would be required to provide anywhere from 56 to 65% of the new units as affordable units, and probably couldn't afford to do that.
The level of subsidy required to provide 60% affordable housing would be an incredible amount of money that likely the county would have to put in order to meet that level of subsidy.
Councilmember Friedson.
Yeah, just want to note 2 points. One, this would make even HOC not able to do this for the Housing Production Fund. So we would limit the number of sites that even our most successful and largely talked about mixed income housing program utilizes. That public-private partnership that we use through our public housing agency would not be even possible in the sites that we would be talking about. The other point that I think is really important, we're going from restricted units or to restricted units from non-restricted units. Some of the people, so naturally occurring affordable housing by definition is rented at an affordable rate, but it doesn't mean it's rented to a person who requires that level of affordability. So just as an example, one of the nonprofit preservation fund sets of properties, there was an analysis done that now is under public control, by the way, through the nonprofit preservation fund. Many of the renters are actually above the income threshold that the requirement would require. So they actually would be displaced. Now, maybe that is appropriate and we want to displace them to make room for people who need the rental housing more, but it's a lot more nuanced and a lot more complicated than this type of requirement would allow. In those cases, you have a number of people who choose to rent, and actually the rental study talks about this. There's the super premium expensive units, and then there is naturally occurring affordable housing units that tend to have been built quite a long time ago, 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago. In many cases, we don't have a whole lot in the middle of multifamily rental units that have been built in the last 15, 20, 25 years. And as a result, you have quite a number of people who are above the income threshold for what the naturally occurring affordable housing would require. And we would be faced with a very difficult situation of what would happen to those people. So I urge caution here when we go from strive for to require. That sounds like it's a small change, but it could have a major implication and have some serious unintended consequences, while well-intentioned, that we wouldn't want.
Councilmember Glass.
Thank you, Madam President. Another good conversation, Ms. Gavoni. I appreciate you articulating the heavily subsidized aspect of the conversation. I was going to ask about that. Clearly, in order to affirm a no net loss policy, the funds would have to be there to be able to build those units that are deeply subsidized. The other component of the conversation is about zoning, right? There would need to be increased zoning in order to mirror the number of affordable units and also build what would then be economically feasible. According to our existing policies, some of which exist in various forms, as was noted, in striving for no net loss, does it automatically come with a density bonus or the ability for the home builder to be able to build as much as they want to cover the no net loss and then some?
Density bonuses are only associated with moderately priced dwelling units. You have to provide more than the minimum. So if you provide 15% MPDUs, you get a 22% bonus density, for example. Oftentimes, a lot of these more suburban types are not in a product type that's able to take advantage of the bonus density, so that's another part of the equation. Also, rental agreements, which was part of the project that I had discussed that was preserving affordable units through redevelopment, does not come with a bonus density.
Okay. I think that's a missing part of the conversation as well, that if we want to require no net loss, not only is there the financial component, which has to be built into the budget and has to be readily available, but then allow the home builder to create market rates so that we have the mixed income communities that we're striving for. We have to have mixed income communities. And if the constraints in zoning are such that that is not possible, then I think this is a perfect combination and one perhaps we look into outside of this particular discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no amendment on the table, so I think we are done with the housing section. I think we, thank you, finished up the environmental sustainability, and I'm going to say we're going to stop there. Because we have public hearings this afternoon and other things, and I do not believe we're going to get through community facilities, historic resources. Sorry, Ms. Ballo, you're sitting here. Apologies. Got to come back again. The racial equity and social justice and the implementation section. I believe most of those were unanimous committee recommendations, but I don't want to rush things. I believe most of the decisions that impacted Ms. Dunn and Mr. Kenny from you writing up the resolution that we got through today. So why don't we hold the rest of that? And I thank everyone for being here for the conversation that will continue on December 2nd. The council does have a consent agenda, and I will entertain a motion. Council member Sales moved, Council member Friedson seconded. All those in favor of the consent calendar, please raise your hand. That is unanimous, and I want to acknowledge Jennifer Macedonia, who is, I believe, was here today, is still here. Thank you. Congratulations on your appointment as the new director of the Department of Environmental Protection. And just want to thank everyone, and just thank you for congratulations to you, and thank everyone for being here. We'll come back again at 1:30 for our public hearings. Thank you.